In recent years, streetlights across the U.S. have started glowing a weird violet hue that nobody could explain. And before you think we've slipped into a parallel reality, there's a much simpler explanation. It's a technical problem, and a rather eerie one. It all started in 2021. Back then, at least 300 streetlights that had been installed in Milwaukee began glowing with a purple hue. People described it as giving off a sort of an eerie cyberpunk vibe. That was definitely not good, especially for authorities, who had to figure out a plan to fix them quickly. Replacing all those lights was going to take about 10 weeks. Plus, the crews weren't exactly thrilled about braving Milwaukee's freezing December weather to get the job done. But the problem wasn't just happening there. Month after month, people in places like Kansas, South Carolina, Illinois, and Florida said they were experiencing the same thing. Of course, this kind of news is a goldmine for folks who love a good unsolved case. Soon enough, online detectives jumped in, and theories started flooding the internet. Like, maybe the lights were supposed to repel mosquitoes, or they were releasing chemicals for some unknown reason. And my personal favorite? That Prince's ghost was taking control of those streetlights. You know, like Purple Rain? Anyway, none of that made any sense. Because the truth is that purple hue isn't intentional. It's actually the result of an interesting and somewhat aesthetic failure in some LED chips. You see, from the very beginning of streetlights in the US, the whole idea was to keep things safe and make lighting more efficient. That's how we went from simple oil lamps to gas lamps and through a bunch of other attempts until we finally ended up with electric lighting. Then, about 15 years ago, cities across America started switching their streetlights from sodium lamps to LEDs. And that changed the color of many nighttime roads from a yellowish-orange tone to a bright white. Now this change makes total sense. LEDs are one of the most energy-efficient lighting technologies out there. Let's take an old light bulb, for example. With this one, 90% of its energy turns into heat, not light. But if we look at an LED bulb, it's the opposite. Only about 10 to 20% of its energy becomes heat, and the rest goes into producing light. They also last way longer. Now, LED stands for light-emitting diode. These tiny diodes can shine in all kinds of colors. But one color they don't naturally produce is white. So, when you see white LEDs, like the ones in streetlights and probably inside your own home, they're actually pulling off a clever trick on your eyes. To make white light, you could mix tiny dots of red, green, and blue LEDs together until they blend into white, kind of like mixing paint colors on an artist's palette. That's one way to do it. But there's another, more popular and energy-saving method that's usually used in streetlights. Instead of using 3 colors, manufacturers often start with just blue LEDs, but they coat these blue LEDs with a special fluorescent substance called phosphor. When the bright blue light from the LED hits this layer of yellow silicone phosphor, some of the blue light gets absorbed and transformed into red and yellow light. These new colors mix together with the remaining blue light, and voila! The glow looks white to our eyes. Now, you might be asking, why go through all this trouble? Well, making LEDs shine red and green takes more energy than simply making them shine blue. So sticking with blue LEDs and using phosphor saves electricity. Plus, it's simpler and cheaper because it needs less complicated wiring and few different LED chips. It's a win-win for cities trying to keep costs down and lights on. Of course, this phosphor trick doesn't work for everything. TVs and color-changing light bulbs need to produce many colors precisely, so they still use separate red, green, and blue LEDs. But when it comes to simply lighting up a street in white light, the blue LED plus phosphor method is the favorite choice. Normally, this technique works really well for streetlights, and the materials manufacturers use to make phosphor are extremely stable. But since this weird purple phenomenon is all over the internet, there's no denying that this is happening. So, specialists had to start looking for a cause. It turns out the phosphor coating had probably worn off or hadn't been applied correctly in the first place. Over time, the phosphor layer in some LED devices can start to break down, and without that yellowish filter, they end up shining more blue, giving them a purple glow instead of white. And the reason the problem only showed up after 2021 is because a specific batch of new streetlights that got installed all over the country. Thankfully, it seems like lighting manufacturers have figured out the issue. As a result, you're unlikely to see this problem come back in the next few years. And there you have it. No conspiracies, no Prince's ghost. Too bad. Just a little bit of color-mixing wizardry gone wrong. And little by little, the signature purple glow started disappearing as lamps slowly failed or got replaced. Now that's too bad for fans of the purple lights. Yeah, there have been plenty of reports from people who thought they looked nice. They felt the purple glow gave off enough light to see without being so bright that it hurt their eyes. But in the end, the lights had to be replaced for safety reasons. After all, streetlights are supposed to help you see when it gets dark outside, and the purple lights just aren't very good at that. Some people even had their houses broken into and blamed the poor lighting for making their neighborhoods feel more vulnerable. And then there's driver safety too. The color of the light shining on a roadway can change the way drivers see their surroundings as they make their way through the night. So inside your eyeballs are tiny helpers called photoreceptors. They come in two types, cones and rods. Think of cones as your daytime buddies. They love bright light and are the reason you can see all the beautiful colors around you. But when the sun goes down and things get dim, cones start slacking off. That's when the rods step in to save the day, or rather the night. Rods are the night shift workers of your eyes. They're super sensitive and help you see in low light, even if everything looks more like shades of gray than full color. But here's the thing. Rods are extra good at picking up light from the blue part of the spectrum. In other words, bluish light stands out more to your rods than other colors do in the dark. Now, most rods hang out in the outer edges of your retina, the part of your eye responsible for peripheral vision. So, when you're driving at night under bluish streetlights and you suddenly catch a hint of motion out of the corner of your eye, that's your rods doing their job. Under bluish light, they're even quicker to spot things moving around in your periphery than they would be under yellowish white lights. That boost in your peripheral vision under bluish light comes with a bit of a trade-off. Sure, your rods are great for spotting movement out of the corner of your eye, but the moment you try to look straight at whatever is moving, bam, it can suddenly get harder to see and focus. So it's not super safe for drivers. Okay, but does the purple glow actually affect our eyesight or cause any long-term problems? Manufacturers say we can rest easy because this effect is harmless. I mean, there's no evidence that anyone's been hurt by it. But it's true that blue light scatters more easily than most other visible light and can make it harder for your eyes to focus, especially in low light conditions. So, yeah, I guess we can all be glad that this purple lighting is finally going back to white. See?
Utah is turning into a desert, and it's happening way faster than anyone thought. In just a few decades, the state's most famous lake could dry up completely. And when that happens, huge clouds of toxic dust could cover entire cities, forcing millions of people to leave their homes for good. So, what is really going on? Utah is a western state in the US, and locals like to joke that it's already pretty much one big desert. And honestly, they're not that wrong. Most of the state is scorching hot and dry. In fact, Utah won the title of the second driest state in the entire country. But that only feels like a win if you actually enjoy temperatures of 101 degrees Fahrenheit. But when I say desert, don't picture endless sand dunes like the Sahara. Utah's deserts are more about canyons, rocky landscapes, and very scarce vegetation. And if you look at the state from above, a huge body of water immediately stands out. That's the Great Salt Lake, the largest saltwater lake in the entire Western Hemisphere. But soon, it might not even be a lake at all. Yep, this whole region is turning into a desert, no exception. That's a big deal because the Great Salt Lake isn't just any lake, it's essential for them. And there are three big reasons why. First, there's the cultural side. Long before any major cities ever showed up, it was already a place of deep spiritual meaning for indigenous tribes in Utah. Then there's the wildlife. This region is a crucial stop along the migration routes of about 10 million birds, including eared grebes and American avocets. For them, it's a place to feed, nest, and rest before continuing their journey. And finally, there's the economy. The Great Salt Lake is worth big money, bringing in about $1.3 billion a year for Utah. But its reach goes far beyond the United States and supports industries all over the world. This place is packed with brine shrimp, also known as sea monkeys. These tiny crustaceans are very important since they feed fish farms in dozens of countries. Believe it or not, almost half of the world's brine shrimp supply comes from the Great Salt Lake. But it's not just about these little creatures. This region also gives us magnesium, sea salt, and other minerals that keep Utah's economy running. It's such an important spot that it provides jobs for about 9,000 people. Now that you know how essential the Great Salt Lake is, here's the hard truth. It's drying up, fast. And there are two big culprits: the weather and, well, us. You see, the lake's been feeding the effects of shifting weather patterns. For a while now, more of the region's precipitation has been falling as rain instead of snow, and that's bad news. Snow is better for the lake because it piles up in the mountains and melts slowly, feeding the lake over time. But now, with less snow and more rain, the lake isn't getting refilled like it used to. And then there's the human factor. Starting back in the early 1900s, authorities began building dams, canals, and pipelines around the lake. The idea was simple: divert the lake's water to farms, factories, and the fast-growing towns nearby. People along the Wasatch Front have been actively diverting water from the lake for over a century. But in the last few decades, things have really ramped up. Think about it. Back in 1982, the Salt Lake City area had around 700,000 people. Fast forward to 2025 and it's about 1.2 million. That's a lot more showers, crops, and industry all pulling water away from the lake. And that brings us to where things stand today. Parts of the Great Salt Lake are now only about 40% full by volume. Sure, the water levels rise and fall from year to year, but overall, they've been dropping for decades. Back in the 1980s, the Great Salt Lake stretched over more than 3,000 square miles. By 2021, it barely covered 950 square miles. At this rate, the lake could disappear completely within just a few years. Pretty terrifying, huh? And the danger isn't just about the cultural history that could disappear, the millions of birds that could be lost, or Utah's economy taking a massive hit. The air itself could become harmful, turning this whole region into a dangerous place to live. Turns out, the sediments at the bottom of the Great Salt Lake are packed with materials that show high reactivity. In simple terms, stuff that could be bad, even toxic for us. When the lake shrinks, the exposed lakebed dries out and turns to dust, and that dust doesn't just stay put. It gets picked up by the wind and blown straight into the air. The problem is that the lake is pretty close to big cities, and the dust that could come from it might carry metals like manganese, iron, copper, and lead, all of which can seriously irritate your lungs. When that happens, it can trigger inflammation and lead to respiratory issues. Experts believe it might also be connected to heart problems, developmental defects, and other serious health risks. These findings were published in 2024. At the time, scientists admitted they couldn't yet confirm whether those toxic substances were reaching populated areas. They still needed better equipment to track the wind and all. Even so, people were already worried. Then, in May of 2025, the headlines hit. A dust storm carrying toxic elements had, in fact, swept across the Salt Lake Valley, impacting residents in some of Utah's most densely populated areas. People in Magna and Tooele County actually watched a massive plume of dust roll right over their cities. So yeah, even though we still need more studies to know just how bad things could get, or if the biggest cities will be hit. Groups like the nonprofit Grow the Flow say the disaster is already underway. They report that dust storms from more than 1,000 square miles of exposed lakebed are already drifting into nearby communities, affecting the air people are breathing right now. This is just one reason why the situation is becoming such a big crisis, and why the authorities are so concerned. But it's not like there's nothing that can be done. People in Utah are already taking steps to turn things around, or at least keeping it from getting any worse. Over the past few years, Utah's authorities have made getting water back to the Great Salt Lake a top priority. They've done it by creating special policies for farmers and setting up new tools to track water flows, for example. They believe those efforts are starting to pay off. The lake hit a historic low in 2022, but the winters of 2023 and 2024 brought above-average snowfall. When that snow melted, the water ran into rivers and helped the lake rise a little. That's good news, but not great. I mean, the lake is still several feet below what's considered an ecologically healthy level. So, they had to come up with more ambitious plans. And recently, almost 23 billion gallons of water were sent from Utah Lake to the Great Salt Lake through the Jordan River. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 750 Olympic-sized swimming pools. It's enough water to supply about 3,000 homes for a year. The good news is that most of Utah's lake water comes from snowpack melt. And not long ago, it was nearly 96% full. So this plan is a real win-win. It helps keep the Great Salt Lake at a healthier level, and it also helps prevent flooding at Utah Lake. This is probably just the start. Over the next few months, the Great Salt Lake could get another boost from more controlled water releases across its basin. Of course, this problem is far from over, but every drop of water helps. If these efforts keep going, Utah might actually have a fighting chance to save this precious lake and keep the area from possibly turning into a desert.
Humans are at the top of the food chain, but despite this, some creatures cause us a lot of trouble, and we can't do anything about them. Look at these flies with red eyes and blue-green bodies. These are some farmers' worst nightmare in the United States of America. Meet the New World screwworm flies. These little troublemakers have been munching on livestock from Florida to California for centuries, racking up some serious damage to the agricultural scene. To combat these pesky flies, the U.S. Department of Agriculture dropped a whopping 15 million sterile screwworm larvae from helicopters along the Panama-Colombia border. There's even a factory in Panama cranking out these sterile larvae like it's factory-fresh fruit. This action sounds weird, but it makes a lot of sense. The thing is, female flies only get one shot at mating in their entire lives. So if they happen to mate with a sterile dude, that's it. No offspring, ever. This clever trick means healthy screwworms can't reproduce when surrounded by sterile pals, which keeps their numbers in check. But how do we make these male flies sterile in the first place? Simple. A little radiation zap does the trick. You throw a bunch of flies in a lab, give them a quick spin through an X-ray machine, and then drop them from a helicopter into the wild, where their relatives are hanging out. If screwworms start making a comeback, inspectors hop on ATVs and cruise thousands of miles to hunt down any infected animals and stop the spread. There's no magic trick to wipe out these parasites completely, but the game plan is clear. Keep the sterile fly drops coming and stay one step ahead of these pesky little critters. Do you know why it's too dangerous to move animals from one habitat to another? There's a possibility that they won't encounter predators in the new area and will become an invasive species that will provoke an ecological disaster. Here's a simple example. In the 30s in the 20th century, farmers from Australia faced a serious problem. Cane beetles were spoiling sugarcane in the northern part of the country. Insects devoured a huge amount of the harvest, and people couldn't stop it. They didn't want to spoil the cane with poisonous pesticides, so they brought a group of cane toads from South America in the hope that the toads would eat the pests. But when these toads found themselves in the reed fields, they couldn't reach the bugs, as they lived on tall reeds. The toads just couldn't jump at such height and get the pests. So instead of beetles, they began to eat other insects. Amphibians started multiplying at a tremendous rate. The female cane toad can lay about 30,000 eggs at a time. After 3 days, small tadpoles hatch from the eggs. They swim in the water for 20 weeks and then turn into grown-up toads that live from 5 to 10 years. Millions of jumping animals began taking over the entire northern part of the continent, destroying all the biodiversity around. Leaves, grass, insects, carrion. Toads ate all this and didn't leave food for other animals. The problem was that the toads turned out to be very hardy creatures. Heat, cold, rain, droughts, they can breed anywhere and nothing can stop them. But what about other animals? Australia is full of alligators, big birds, and other creatures that would love to feast on croaking amphibians. Yes, it's true. But any animal that tried to eat these toads didn't survive. The problem is that cane toads are venomous. There are special glands behind their eyes that produce strong toxins that cause serious health problems in any animal. Some farmers saw birds falling from the sky after they had swallowed these amphibians. More than 80 years have passed since farmers brought 100 cane toads to Australia. Now, there are about 1.5 billion of them. They have already covered 386,000 square miles, which is about the same area as the states of Texas and Oklahoma combined. And so far, scientists and biologists haven't come up with an effective way to deal with them. People tried to catch them, but it was useless. Even if you catch 98 toads out of 100 next to a small pond, the 2 remaining toads can produce 30,000 eggs per night. Nature may be able to restore balance when some animals with immunity to toad toxins appear in Australia. But at the moment, cane toads are unstoppable. How can we stop the uncontrolled population of mosquitoes that are dangerous to humans? The correct answer is to create 735 million genetically modified mosquitoes and mix these 2 groups. All over the world, many species of mosquitoes carry infections that cause serious health problems to humans. Almost no one likes mosquitoes. These buzzing insects prevent us from sleeping, and their bites are incredibly itchy. Many people would probably be happy if these creatures disappeared from the face of the earth. And scientists might have found a way to make this wish come true. Only female mosquitoes bite us because they need food to produce eggs. So, scientists released genetically modified male mosquitoes with a special protein in their bodies. After 2 mosquitoes come into contact, this protein is transmitted from the male to the female and then prevents it from producing offspring. All this happens before the age when females begin to bite. So, females can't create offspring, which means they don't need to bite people and animals anymore. And the more of such proteins scientists spread, the smaller the mosquito population will be. It sounds good, but about 240,000 people have signed a petition to cancel this experiment. Many scientists believe that the disappearance of one insect species can lead to a biological catastrophe. Nature is a complex, balanced system where the slightest change can lead to serious problems. Mosquitoes are a food source for many reptiles and amphibians. The extinction of mosquitoes can trigger the disappearance of many species. It's like a chain reaction of catastrophes, the end of which is unknown. Nevertheless, modified mosquitoes have already been released in Florida, and it seems that nothing terrible has happened. The good news is that people have fewer health problems after that. Moreover, since 2019, about 1.5 billion mosquitoes have been released worldwide. It has saved millions of lives and hasn't disrupted the delicate balance of nature yet. Recently, scientists have released another group of safe mosquitoes in East Africa. Well, let's hope that scientists have everything under control. Invasive species are not always mosquitoes, flies, or amphibians. These can also be large animals, such as feral pigs or super pigs. These pigs are a mix of domestic swine and wild boar. There are already almost 7 million feral hogs in the south of the USA. Thanks to people's efforts, these animals haven't spread to the north yet. But the danger to the northern states comes from Canada. Pigs were brought there in the 80s to support agriculture. But in the early 2000s, wild boars lost their popularity. They just stayed in the wild, and farmers were sure that those animals wouldn't survive the harsh Canadian winter. Oh, how wrong they were. Wild pigs turned out to be hardy, mobile, and capable of rapid reproduction. These animals dig and tear up the ground, eat almost everything they come across, and thus take food from other animals. By the way, other creatures can become their lunch too. Wild pigs attack mice, geese, ducks, and some species of deer. They trample crops, grass, and flowers and are not afraid of anything. They're like natural bulldozers. Any farm is in danger of extinction if it's in the path of thousands of super pigs. And people can't do anything with them. The northern states understand that an invasion is imminent, so they're preparing for a long battle. Super pigs love swampy areas with tall grass. Canadian and American farmers will try to drive them into more open areas and fence those places off. The plan is not perfect, but it can slow the pigs down and save some time. Have you noticed that American vehicles are getting larger? The top 3 best-selling vehicles in the US for 2023 are all massive pickup trucks. When you look at the top 15 car models sold, only 3 of them are sedans. Everything else is either an SUV or a truck. In the rest of the world, automobiles are notably compact. In Europe, for example, compact cars like city vehicles, subcompacts, and smaller cars accounted for over 35% of sales in 2021. In the United States, these 3 categories represented just a little over 10% of sales. I mean, there's a trend for extra in many aspects of consumption. Refrigerators in kitchens or fast food meals are larger than their counterparts in other countries. Studies say that consumers have a preference for larger vehicles when given the choice. So there's a bit of a chicken and egg situation here. Consumer preferences have pushed car manufacturers to produce progressively larger vehicles. Massive trucks and SUVs were made one after another. And then, to top it off, this giant 8-foot-tall red truck came roaring by and left behind a trail of thick smog. Considering rising environmental concerns and record-breaking heat worldwide, you would expect smaller cars to be more popular. Apparently, no. But when thousands of people follow this trend, many other problems come along. We'll get to that later. The Ocean State used to be the last stronghold of the majority car culture, but it couldn't resist any longer. Even Rhode Island has had a takeover of trucks. From the 1900s until the late 1980s, cars ruled the roads across the nation. But in 1989, trucks made their move, starting with Alaska. After that, several states in the Mountain West and Northern Plains joined the truck trend. It was after 2008 that most states embraced trucks, especially when crossover utilities gained popularity in the suburbs. This truck wave seemed to peak in 2012. More than a dozen states switched allegiance. Here, some industry experts argue that regulatory gaps have contributed to this transformation. Loopholes that favor trucks have played a significant role in driving this trend. Updated tracking methods by the Federal Highway Administration included pickups, SUVs, vans, crossovers, and even commercial and government vehicles in the truck category. Okay, but why do people want to go for these vehicles? Well, gas is relatively cheap in America. Plus, many people find larger vehicles more convenient. Lastly, with massive advertising and lobbying budgets, car companies have a strong motivation to sell people light trucks. Cars usually have 2 rows of seats and a trunk or hatchback, while light trucks are typically built on a truck chassis. In the case of many crossovers, they're built on a car chassis with some off-roading features added. Nowadays, the theoretical distinction between a car and a truck can be a bit blurry. What's certain is that trucks are generally more profitable than cars, thanks to two historical factors. First, there's the chicken tax, a 25% tariff imposed in 1964 as part of a trade clash with Europe. This tariff made producing pickups and cargo vans more profitable in the US because foreign factories couldn't undercut the prices of American manufacturers. Second, the corporate average fuel economy standards were established in 1975. They were more lenient for work trucks and light trucks compared to family sedans. Trucks were also exempt from the 1978 gas guzzler tax. These incentives led American car manufacturers to focus on trucks. In fact, this sort of resulted in the birth of the SUV, which often combines the features of a car and a truck. Nowadays, you go towards a crossover SUV if you have a family of 5, for example. It's a vehicle resembling a station wagon with some extra features. These extras allow it to be classified as a light truck. In 2016, the automotive landscape in the United States was undergoing a noticeable shift as SUVs and pickup trucks took center stage on the market. With each passing month, the share of traditional car sales was gradually shrinking. It was largely due to the lower petrol prices and changing consumer preferences. SUVs have long held a special place in the hearts of Americans. Crossovers, a category including smaller SUVs like the Toyota RAV4 and Ford Escape, bear a striking resemblance to the cars of the 1950s. These similarities emphasize the vehicle's taller profile, elevated seating position, and spacious interiors. This combination resonated with consumers who appreciated the commanding view of the road and expansive window views, causing them to drift away from the traditional sedan. Sales of larger sedans had taken a sharp dive, and even the luxury sedan market had stagnated. This pushed companies like Maserati and Jaguar, originally known for their sports cars, into the SUV market. Even iconic brands like the Porsche began to focus on SUVs and crossovers. They realized the popularity trend of consumers. Andrew Coetzee, head of product planning at Toyota, says that their strategy emphasizes injecting more personality and flavor into their vehicles, particularly to cater to younger buyers. Okay, the look and feel of these giants might be great, but now let's explore the less seen side. There are drawbacks to these larger vehicles. They come with a heftier price tag and tend to consume more fuel. When they were first made, fuel prices weren't high, but now spending more on fuel can be a problem for your wallet. There's more. Some research suggests that accidents involving larger vehicles contribute to more fatalities on American roads than their counterparts. They also pose a greater risk to pedestrians and cyclists. The number of pedestrian fatalities has doubled. In 2021, road accidents became the second leading cause of saying goodbye to this world for Americans under 45. This situation would be merely intriguing if the large vehicles didn't have a range of potentially lethal attributes. As American cars have grown in size, the number of fatalities among drivers and passengers inside these rolling fortresses has decreased by 22%. But according to experts' estimates, thousands of pedestrians' lives could have been saved between 2000 and 2018 if Americans had continued to favor smaller vehicles. The association of individualism with driving can also have the worst consequences for those inside cars. Almost 1 in 10 drivers and front seat passengers in the US don't wear seatbelts, and 45% admit to regularly driving at least 15 miles per hour over the speed limit on highways. These percentages are far lower in the UK at just 3%. In total, 43,000 individuals lost their lives on American roads in 2021. This is the highest mortality rate among developed nations by a substantial margin. Estimates indicate that a fifth of these lives could have been spared each year if the rates of speeding and seatbelt use matched those of comparable countries. Modern-day pickup trucks are now designed more for kids and families than livestock and giant rocks. Before the 80s, nearly every pickup truck in the US had a single cab, meaning you could squeeze in a total of 3 people inside. They all shared a bench-style seat. Plus, the bed stretched 8 feet, making the truck a full-sized, long bed vehicle. But these models are becoming a relic of the past. As of 2020, 80% of pickup trucks in the streets sported what we might call extended crew cabs. This means they've got not one, but 2 sets of comfy seats for up to 5 people. Most of these models also have 4 doors that could rival your average suburban home's entrance. The cargo space? Well, let's just say it's been put on a diet. These passenger-packed cargo-slimmed setups have become all the rage, so much so that a few brands have said farewell to single-cab models. As pickup trucks evolved into family-friendly rides, they underwent a makeover too. The typical American truck now commands a price tag close to $50,000, marking a 41% surge from a mere decade ago. These trucks often flaunt lavish, feature-packed interiors crafted to give high-end SUVs and sedans a run for their money.
According to the United Nations, India became the most populous country in the world in 2023. Can you guess where the United States of America stands in that rating? It's number 3. And America is the 4th largest country in terms of size. It takes up some 6% of Earth's landmass. Plenty of space for 335 million people who live there, right? No need to squeeze them into one region. Well, not quite. The population of the U.S. is distributed pretty unevenly. Let's draw a line right through the middle of the country. It'll run from North Dakota in the north to Texas in the south. Once you input census data and do some math, astounding figures appear. 80% of the U.S. population lives east of the imaginary line. The remaining 20% live to the west. That's just 1 in 5 Americans. We're talking about large metropolitan areas such as Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco. You don't believe me? Just look at a satellite map of the U.S. at night. The right part is shining pretty bright, right? But why? Why is there such a huge imbalance in population? Simply put, history and geography. The East Coast is the place where the U.S. became independent in 1776. These are the original 13 colonies. Soon enough, settlers started spreading westward. One important milestone was the Louisiana Purchase. Today, this region is mostly what we call the Midwest. The area aligns nicely with the Mississippi watershed. Yup, this means plenty of fertile soil ideal for agriculture. But does this automatically mean a spike in population? The demographics of the U.S. reveal that a majority of its citizens live either on the east or the west coast. This leaves a large patch of land in the middle of the country virtually empty. People know it as America's underpopulated belt. The area stretches from the Canadian border in the north to Mexico in the south. The total surface area of this strip of land is 350,000 square miles. That's twice the size of California. One massive piece of land. In fact, this narrow strip accounts for 12% of the contiguous United States. That's the U.S. without Alaska and Hawaii. The belt runs north to south through 7 states, but its population makes up only 1% of the total number of people living in the United States. Now, this doesn't mean that the area is completely empty. It's still home to just over 3 million people. That's roughly the population of the island country of Jamaica. But there is room here for many more residents. Let's take the example of Nigeria. Its total land area is slightly bigger than the sparsely inhabited belt in America. But Nigeria's population is a huge 206 million people. This makes it the 7th most populated country on the planet. Impressive, right? But why isn't the American Midwest living up to its potential? Well, time for one last history lesson. I've already mentioned how the United States expanded from the East Coast to the West Coast. This doesn't mean that the West was lagging too far behind. Take, for example, the cities of San Francisco and Los Angeles. They were incorporated in 1850. That's just 13 years after Chicago. The following year, Portland, Oregon became incorporated. You get the picture. And then, in 1869, the United States completed building its first transcontinental railroad. In terms of transport, the country was unified. There is no historical reason strong enough to explain why so few people live in the center of the country. So now it's time for some interesting geography. If you look at the physical map of the United States, you'll notice that this belt lies in the Great Plains. As the name suggests, the area is flat, which should be ideal for large settlements. Well, not really. East of this region, there is a huge patch of the color brown. It's covered by mountains. But not just any mountains. These are the Rockies. The range is around 76 million years old. It has several peaks over 14,000 feet. And most of the Rockies are national parks, a vast nature reserve. But most importantly, the range plays a vital role in the region's climate. Ever heard of the rain shadow effect? Let me explain. Wet weather systems form over the Pacific Ocean. Then they travel east, where they meet the Rockies. Now the air has to go up over the mountains. This is where it cools down and condenses. The final result? A lot of rain and snow for the people living on or west of the range. And just a few drops east of it. When air from the Pacific finally reaches the Great Plains, it doesn't contain much moisture anymore. In fact, the weather system starts taking up moisture from the surrounding landscape. This creates an arid climate east of the Rocky Mountains. That's the exact location of the belt where so few Americans live. It's one of the driest parts of the country. So when settlers came in the 19th century, they were like, nah, I'll just continue west. Plus, there was the gold rush in California they were heading for. The climate in this part of the plains isn't great for agriculture, and huge fluctuations in air temperature don't help either. In a single day, temperatures can drop from 70 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. These sudden changes in outside temperature are harmful to human health. It's like stepping inside an air-conditioned room on a sizzling summer day. Not a pleasant feeling. Southern California has a similarly dry climate, yet close to 40 million people live there. This makes California the most populous U.S. state. Their secret? A vast network of irrigation canals and aqueducts, plus a share of water from the Colorado River. Summers in the Great Plains get very hot, while winters are extremely cold. The reason behind these wild weather patterns are polar winds. They get a piggyback ride along the ridges of the Rockies and then rapidly descend into the plains. A winter day in Wyoming, for example, can start pleasantly warm, but later in the afternoon, the temperature can easily drop below zero. You just wouldn't know how to dress, and you probably wouldn't want to relocate here. That's what 99% of Americans think too. Humans like to feel comfortable, so we choose to live in temperate climate zones. Places that are either too cold or too hot don't have a large population. Just look at the driest inhabited continent. You've guessed it correctly, it's Australia. Nearly 70% of the country is either arid or semi-arid. That's a subtle way of saying that it's a desert. That's why Australians are huddled in coastal areas. 90% of them live in big cities, such as Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. The only exception is the capital, Canberra. They build it inland close to a water source. But Australia's interior is sparsely populated. Just like in the States, there is only one major town in an area the size of 12 Lake Michigans. A huge shout out to the residents of Alice Springs. They truly live in an oasis. And what about places with a temperate climate like Europe? The population is evenly distributed here, right? Well, yes and no, depending on the country. In Germany, 77% of people live in urban areas. They have plenty of major cities to choose from. Berlin, Hamburg, Munich, and Cologne all have over 1 million residents. But let's look at neighboring France. How many cities with a population over 1 million can you name? Okay, Paris, definitely. It has over 12 million residents in the metropolitan area. But now comes the staggering fact. The next two cities on the list have a population of barely 2 million, respectively. Can you notice the huge imbalance? This is the case in most large European countries. In Greece, for example, 35% of the population lives in the capital, Athens. So, the largely underpopulated center of the United States is not a unique example. America is the land of opportunities, but chances of finding a better life are greater in large cities. The country's top 100 metropolitan areas account for at least 3/4 of the nation's GDP, and most of them are located on the east and the west coast. There are no cities with over 1 million residents in America's underpopulated belt.
In some ways, the United States is a whole different world, totally different from every other place. So let's take a look at what's normal there that baffles people from the outside. One of the first things a foreigner notices when entering the country is flags. American flags everywhere. On buildings like schools and houses, and on clothes like shorts, t-shirts, you name it. Throughout history, Americans have changed 27 flags. The current American flag was only adopted in 1960 and is so far the longest-lasting flag of the country. It wasn't created by the authorities, though. In 1958, there was a contest for a design of the new American flag, and the winning flag was made by a 17-year-old high school student from Ohio. The reason why Americans love their flag so much is national pride. But why not so many countries do the same? Well, some countries avoid displaying them for historical reasons. Other countries only raise the flag on special occasions to highlight the importance of the event. Still, some countries display their flag as often as Americans do. In Denmark, people are quite proud of their flag too. They decorate the winter holiday tree and birthday cakes with them, and you can always find stickers with Danish flags, red and white candles, and other goodies with the flag in a grocery store. People in Sweden are also very much into their flag and have flagpoles everywhere. Now, let's go to a restaurant, shall we? Many things there are very specific to the States. Like, for example, tons of ice in every drink. Turns out there is some history to this preference. America has always had a lot of ice as a resource, since New England's lakes and rivers have a lot of those during winter. Centuries ago, before refrigerators and other helpful cooling machines, that kind of cold resource was very valuable, and the States started exporting ice to other parts of the world. And also, of course, consuming it themselves. They started to put ice in their hot drinks, in contrast to the British, who were always drinking their beverages hot. The ice in the drinks has become an American thing, and it was also considered a rich person's drink. Yep, the ice would also show a person's status. Of course, with time, when refrigerators appeared, ice became available to everyone, and Americans started to add it to their drinks commonly. The habit remained, but also, ice drinks are very refreshing, which is especially important in the hot south of the country. But if you come from abroad and don't want your drink freezing cold, always specify it to the waiter. The next striking thing is the huge portions that are served, and there is a reason for that too. It wasn't always like this, but in the second half of the last century, due to pesticides and fertilizers, farmers started to be able to grow more food than they used to. The government caught on, subsidizing them to grow even more food. So, the amount of available food increased. Over time, companies started to increase the sizes of their portions. Why serve less food and get less money if you can serve a bit more and also charge more? That's good for business, and it's a win-win. Customers get more food for just a little bit more money. So, larger portions stuck. Okay, now we need to take a little toilet break. And, surprisingly, there are a lot of foreigners who find American toilets weird. First, what's up with those huge gaps in bathroom stalls? Let's start with the more obvious part, gaps on the bottom of the doors. Those are quite common, even outside the US, and they serve several purposes. First, you can see if there's a person inside without trying to break into an occupied stall. Second, it provides some ventilation and makes it easier to clean the floor in the bathrooms. The gaps on the sides are more questionable. Of course, people on the outside can't see everything going on behind the door, but still, there's not much privacy whatsoever. In most other countries, the gaps are either negligible or non-existent. So what's up with them in America? I did some research. Some sources say that since every inch of material is expensive, wide gaps are made to reduce the costs of bathroom stalls. Other sources say that when people feel exposed like this, they have fewer incentives to do something illegal in public bathrooms. Next observation, American toilets have way more water in their bowls in comparison to, for example, European ones. The reason is that those types of toilets use different flashing systems, and an American one needs more water to flush effectively. In many countries, especially in Asia, most bathrooms have bidets, which are used for after-toilet cleaning, and tourists don't understand why Americans wouldn't adopt those too. After all, if you step in mud, you'll go and wash your foot instead of just wiping it off with a tissue. The same logic works here. Also, it reduces toilet paper usage. So it's more sustainable and it's environmentally friendly. Some say there's a strong stigma in America around bidets that is extremely hard to overcome. Others say that toilets in the US don't have enough room to install a bidet. So they don't have those, especially if there are other well-known ways. Before we leave the restaurant, we need to tip the waiter. Tipping in the United States is way more common than in most other countries. You're expected to tip any service person who helped you with something. While some kind of tipping exists in some other countries, the extent of it is smaller. And there are also countries like Japan and Denmark where tipping isn't a thing at all. Those countries have minimum wage laws that dictate decent wages employers must pay their workers. This way, the need to pay money to service stuff isn't pushed onto the customers. By the way, here's one more fact about the prices. Probably the craziest thing in the States tourists have to adapt to are prices in stores. The tax isn't included into the displayed price and is added on top while checking out. So people who are short on money can't pre-calculate the price they will have to pay to make sure that they have enough money. But really, why is it so? The main reason behind such a weird policy is transparency. This way, taxpayers know how much tax they pay and can resist raising the tax rate in case it comes on the national agenda. Also, it allows buyers to compare the costs of products across states fairly, since tax rates may differ. So, if the tax isn't included, you compare the actual bread costs between Alabama and Alaska, for example. In some places in America, it's not very easy to get around unless you travel by car. In some regions, there's often no sidewalk taking you to the closest convenience store, or a crosswalk, allowing you to cross the road right in front of the store. The main reason for that is probably the fact that the United States is a big country with vast lands and everything is spread out. Neighborhoods can be scattered around, wide suburban territories quite far away from one another, so that's already far from being walking distance, and sidewalks aren't needed because, yes, no one's walking. Studies show that Spanish or Germans walk at least twice as much as Americans, but in those countries, everything is way closer. And last and not least, you guessed it, the imperial system. It's based on the human body. A foot is an average foot size of a person, so you might think it's quite intuitive for anyone. Well, no. Foreigners are incredibly confused with feet, inches, gallons, and Fahrenheits, and tend to convert it all to the familiar metric system. Well, in this sense, the British are even more confusing. Those guys use both imperial and metric systems. For height, it's mostly feet and inches, but for weight, kilograms. Great Britain used to have the imperial system, but later they were forced to switch to the metric system. So now they're using a combination, whatever helps to be more precise.
Ring ring, your mail's here. You ordered it yesterday all the way from across the country, but it only took a day and a half for it to reach you. It's certainly not like the 1800s when your mail would get delivered by horse. The entire process back then would take up to 10 days, and it's not like it came from another continent. Frontiersmen were your postal service. They'd hop on their horses and ride the distance. Considering how far away it was, and it could be thousands and thousands of miles, they did this in a surprisingly short amount of time. Gears have shifted though. We've come to the 1900s, and you're a pilot now. You're en route and it's getting dark, but you're still thousands of feet up in the air. Maybe it's time for you to land since you can't see a thing. Plus, you're starting to run low on fuel. If you were to have an emergency landing right now, things might get iffy down there. You'd be in a strange territory, and you won't know what weird things you might be up against. Some of your coworkers tried, and it wasn't a very good idea. Look out for that shadow. Even if you did want to fly at night without much visibility whatsoever, it wouldn't be a good idea. See, you're guided by landmarks when charting your route. That mountain ahead looks familiar, but the closer you get to it, the more you realize you've made a mistake. It's not like the weather will play nice either. So you stop, and the letters you were carrying will now go on a train where they can ride out for the rest of the night. After dawn, it's time for another pilot to take them up to the sky again to speed up the process. This whole ordeal takes a lot longer than it should just for mail to get across the country, and people are already waiting at their doorstep with their arms crossed and grumpy faces. Radars are nowhere to be seen yet, so great minds got to thinking, what if we change things with some big arrows on the ground? This way, pilots would always know where to go. On top of these, towers would serve as beacons of light. Now pilots would be able to navigate at night, and you wouldn't need to rely on sketchy mountains to know where you're at. The arrows went all the way from New York to San Francisco, and there were approximately 1,500 of them. Towers were 50 feet tall, and their lights would rotate while flashing every 10 seconds. The arrows themselves were pretty huge too, about 50 to 70 feet long. They were painted bright yellow so you wouldn't miss them. Every 3 to 5 miles, you'd spot one of these arrow beacons. When the weather was nice, you'd be able to see the lights coming from the beacons from as far as 10 miles away. And below those, there was another set of lights. Red and green lights would flash a Morse code, and pilots would know exactly what beacon this was. The worst has happened, and one of your engines is failing. You're prepared for this, and up ahead, there's a landing field placed there exactly for this type of situation. Every 25 miles along the arrow route, you'd find one of these intermediate landing fields with rotating radiant lights on them. Even though less common, these would be more powerful than the other type. You could see them from as far as 75 miles away. But technology kept improving, and it got to the point that the regular beacon lights got so strong, they'd be seen up to 40 miles away in clear weather. Because of this, they only needed one tower every 10 miles. Then, the 4-course radio stations came along, and all a pilot needed was a radio receiver, a pair of headphones, and a chart. Arrows became a thing of the past. On the plane, a pilot would listen to audio signals to check if they were on track. And soon, the radio was all there was. You'd have it all: guidance, weather info, and even radio beacon signals. With Morse code communication, pilots would turn to the right when hearing a certain stream of code, and to the left if they heard a different one. A steady tone would mean they could just fly straight ahead. Sometimes, though, mountains would bounce off radio signals, and it would lead pilots into a completely different course. This, of course, would end up with a plane being stranded somewhere. LORAN, that's long-range navigation, coordinated the pilot's location better. These stations were placed all across the Atlantic and the Pacific. 2 different stations placed far away from each other would emit a signal at the exact same time. And with the help of 2 others, also emitting signals, you'd be able to figure out the location of a plane. It's a 4-station work. LORAN had a big weakness: electrical storms. Put simply, if a plane was in the middle of a storm, it would be like it never existed. The last arrow beacon was only shut down in 1973. It lasted a long time. But today, you'll still be able to see some of the arrows from back then. They aren't painted bright yellow anymore, they're just big, plain, concrete arrows. Most of them were lost while redeveloping some of the cities over the United States. There's one west of Phoenix, Arizona. It was the beacon number 33 of the LA to Phoenix Airway. The arrow is gone, but part of the radio tower is still there, although in bad condition. There are about 10 of them in California, and the rest are spread around the country. But let's jump a few years back before the arrows and radio. Around 1910, when pilots would only fly using pilotage, they'd chart their route based on landmarks. They would only dare flying during the day and not at a high altitude. In the 1920s, though, they started venturing into flying at night and even further than they were used to. But since landmarks were nearly impossible to identify at night, they started using celestial navigation. They tried to read the stars to know where they were. They had the help of some tools, but it wasn't too effective because they would still get lost more often than not. Turbulence wouldn't help either, because instead of reading one star, they'd look at a completely different one, the wrong one. With no light pollution and way too many stars to count, it was too easy to get lost in the sky. A plane stays aloft because its wings are shaped so that air moves faster over the top of the wing, and because the air is moving faster, its pressure decreases. It means there's less pressure on top of the wing than on its bottom. It's this difference that lifts the wings and the plane up. Rolling the plane is the aileron's job. You lower the aileron on the wing you want to rise, and you raise the aileron on the wing you want to drop. The pitch is what makes a plane go up and down when the elevators on the plane's tail are adjusted by the pilot. Lowering them will make the plane's nose drop, and raising them will make it rise. The yaw is what makes the plane turn. It's the rudder's job. When it is turned to one side, it'll move either left or right. The nose of the plane will always be pointed in the same direction as the rudder. Next time you're on a commercial flight, you can track the plane's movement yourself and know what the pilot's doing. Not entirely, though, because there are tons of complicated mechanics and systems at work in that cabin in front of you. And if you want to know how that works, it might be time for you to enroll in a flight academy. Maybe one day you'll fly fast enough to break the sound barrier. Pilots that do this literally break the sound waves that form in front and around the plane. Air will gather and compress in front of the plane. This will form a shock wave that the plane needs to go through, and when it does, it makes a really loud noise, a sonic boom. It's because of the sudden change in the air pressure. The Concorde was a commercial plane that was way too expensive for an average person. It not only broke through the sound barrier, but could travel up to 5 times the speed of sound. The LaLaurie Mansion, located in the French Quarter of New Orleans, has a grim reputation. Its former owner, Madame Delphine McCarthy LaLaurie, was a wealthy socialite in the early 19th century. The urban legend says that she treated her workers very badly. One night on April 10, 1834, Madame LaLaurie's house began to burn. Madame and her family managed to escape, but she abandoned her workers. They were locked inside the house. The locals, outraged by her negligence, gathered around the house, broke some of its walls, and eventually stole the remaining possessions. After the fire, the LaLaurie family escaped to Paris. Another private mansion was built on this Louisiana land. But it's said that the ghosts of those workers are still trapped inside the property. They tend to bother living people demanding justice. Today, the house is private, but you can book a tour and hear this story in detail. By the way, the mansion and its notorious owner played a big part in the American Horror Story franchise, although they didn't actually film the series in that particular house. American actress and director Kathy Bates played Madame LaLaurie and showcased the quirky character of this famous woman. So you can check it out if you're not afraid. Our next creepy destination was also shown in a movie franchise, the Amityville Horror. The media says this Dutch colonial-style home is located in the village of Amityville in New York. George and Kathy Lutz bought this property in 1975 for $80,000. The low price was due to the tragedy that happened in the house 1 year before. One night, a young man named Ronnie DeFeo, who lived in the house, took the lives of all his family members. The Lutz family began to notice strange activities in the house, such as phantom odors, unreasonably low temperatures, and loud sounds of unknown origin. According to the Lutz family, one day they called a preacher to clear the grim vibes, but he felt very bad during the ritual and his hands started bleeding. The Lutzes fled the house in a rush. Their spooky story inspired the Amityville Horror, a book written by American author Jay Anson and several successful horror movies. Although the house was reconstructed, it still exists. However, its address has been changed to confuse the trail and prevent crowds of tourists from gathering around it. Do you recognize this seemingly cute house in Harrisville, Rhode Island? It's known as one of the most haunted houses in America. The property earned its notorious reputation after multiple people lost their lives in this house over the years. In 1970, the Perrons family began to live here, and according to the legend, an invisible being lived along with them. At first, the entity was playful, but then it started getting more sinister. The family members experienced physical attacks and unexplainable illnesses. They invited the famous mystery hunters, Ed and Lorraine Warren, to research this case, which later inspired a book and the movie The Conjuring, released in 2013. In 2019, the property was purchased by the Heisens family, who also investigated mysteries. They reported some weird stuff going on in the house too, and eventually developed a successful business on haunted tourism. They sold the property for nearly $1.5 million in 2022. Let's move on to Tennessee. The urban legend tells a creepy story that started in 1804. John Bell and his family moved to this peaceful-looking farm in North Carolina. At first, everything went well, but 13 years later, the family began to experience bone-chilling events. At first, they started seeing weird animal-like shadows around the farm. Soon, these mysterious guests began to whisper and eventually talk out loud. Some mysterious entity began to wake up the family at night with loud noises and attacks. It particularly bothered their young daughter, Betsy Bell. Invisible hands grabbed Betsy by the hair and hit her body. When she grew up and was about to get married, the entity did everything to break the engagement, saying that Betsy wouldn't be happy with her groom. Rumors about these scary events spread throughout the village, and the locals began to visit the farm, hoping to see it for themselves. They called the entity Bell Witch. Many years have passed, but the locals still believe that the phantom of the evil witch lives in these places and hides in a cave near the farm. Ohio is one of the most notoriously haunted states in the USA. One of its legendary spots is the Mansfield Reformatory, a former prison that supposedly hosts the country's most creepy entities. The prison is nearly 130 years old. It was closed in 1990 and soon gained fame, especially after becoming the filming location for The Shawshank Redemption. And since we're passing through Ohio, let's take a look at another spooky place. The Chippewa Lake Amusement Park used to attract many guests with its various rides, roller coasters, and iconic Ferris wheel. But in the 1970s, 100 years after opening, the park was forced to close. It happened due to poor maintenance and low attendance. The park has gone through multiple fires, so today it looks like a bunch of creepy ruins overgrown with shrubs and rust. Mark Twain had been living in this charismatic house in Hartford, Connecticut for about 17 years. In this period, he wrote both The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Today, this property serves as a museum that showcases the author's life. But it's also known for some mysterious phenomena. Multiple visitors reported hearing odd noises and seeing a phantom of a woman in white. The most haunted part of the house is the billiard room. Twain used to chill there a lot during his stay, and today, some visitors claim they can smell tobacco smoke as they pass through. Now, Pennsylvania has lots of terrifying tales to offer. Despite its chic appearance, this fancy mansion has been empty for a while now. Its owner, Peter Widener, finished the construction after losing his beloved wife, Hannah, during a tragic yacht trip. It happened at the end of the 19th century, and eventually, Widener lost multiple relatives in this house. He was wealthy enough to invest in the Titanic construction. Perhaps he was fascinated by the idea of an unsinkable ship. But unfortunately, both Peter's oldest son and grandson lost their lives when the Titanic sank. Eventually, the mansion was abandoned. But it's said that the phantoms of the Widener family are still there. And speaking of the Titanic, Molly Brown was one of the survivors. She got famous for rowing a lifeboat for about 7 hours before reaching a safe place. But Molly's own mansion in Denver gained a spooky reputation. She owned the haunted property together with her husband, who ran a mining business. Over the years, multiple people reported seeing phantoms of cats and human figures running down the staircase of the house. The witnesses of such visions insist that something spooky is definitely going on behind these walls. Today, the mansion operates as a museum, so you can go and see it for yourself. And how about meeting a creepy phantom while doing some casual shopping in Soho? The urban legend dates back to 1799. A young lady, Gulielma Elmore Sands, tried to escape with her lover, Levi Weeks. They were tenants in the same boarding house. Around 2 weeks later, her body was found at the bottom of a well in the building that today hosts a large retail store, COS. After the horrifying discovery, the police arrested Levi. Although he was acquitted, Sands' phantom is said to haunt the building as a warning to other ladies. The creepiest thing is that the well is still there and shoppers can see it in the basement at the back of the men's department. Now brace yourself and welcome to the famous haunted toy store in Sunnyvale, California. The legend says that the land under the property used to be a plantation owned by Martin Murphy. He hired a preacher, Johnny Johnson, who fell in love with Murphy's daughter, Elizabeth. But she got engaged to a lawyer. Johnny's heart was broken, and he lost his life in an accident while chopping wood. Today, Johnny's phantom reportedly wanders around the Toys R Us store, still chasing his beloved Elizabeth. Customers and employees report seeing objects moving on their own, hearing mysterious footsteps, and even Johnny's whispers over the intercom system. Ooh.
Mount St. Helens is exploding. A massive earthquake is ripping through the area, and a side of the volcano is giving way, crashing down in a deafening landslide. A towering wall of rock, ash, and debris is roaring down the valley, flattening everything in its path. Then comes the blast, a sideways explosion of superheated gas and volcanic debris. Trees are snapping like matchsticks. Homes are vanishing under an ash cloud so thick it blots out the sun. Ashfall rains down on towns hundreds of miles away. People are scrambling for masks and fleeing roads blocked by mud flows called lahars, toxic rivers of volcanic mud. The air fills with dust. Emergency sirens scream. Airports shut down. Hospitals fill with people struggling to breathe. The sky glows eerie orange as lightning storms ignite within the ash cloud overhead. This nightmarish scenario might play out very soon. Mount St. Helens, the famous volcano that blew its top in 1980, is acting a bit restless lately. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, about 350 earthquakes occurred from February to June 2024, and 12 more from September 2024 to January 2025. It was like a bunch of tiny tremors throwing a party underground. Most were so tiny you wouldn't even feel them. But on May 31st, 2024, there was one that hit magnitude 2.0. It's just strong enough that if you were nearby, you might have felt a little rumble. Don't freak out yet though. Over 95% of those quakes were super small with a magnitude less than 1.0. Scientists say this is the biggest burst of shaking since the volcano last erupted in 2008. But the volcano has already done this before. In the late 80s and 90s, it didn't blow up, so more earthquakes didn't mean an eruption is guaranteed. What's really going on might be something called a recharge, which is like the volcano's version of refueling. Magma, the hot melted rock, slowly climbs up from deep underground and fills a big underground magma chamber about 2.5 to 6 miles down. When magma fills this tank, it can cause a lot of stress underground, which makes the ground shake. Right now, there's no other sign that the volcano is about to blow. No weird ground bulges, no extra gas leaks, no heat spikes. The USGS says this level of shaking can go on for years without anything major happening. The alert level is still at normal. But it was very different back on May 18, 1980. Mount St. Helens unleashed one of the most explosive volcanic eruptions in history. And it all started with a huge earthquake, bigger than magnitude 5. But this wasn't just any earthquake. It triggered a massive landslide that ripped off the top of the volcano and tore away the rock and ice that had been holding everything down like a giant lid. Suddenly, the pressure that had been trapping superheated water underground vanished. That water instantly turned to steam, and boom! It burst sideways in a powerful hydrothermal blast. And that was only the beginning. With the top gone, the magma beneath the surface suddenly felt free. It started rising faster, forming bubbles and erupting with terrifying force. For 9 straight hours, Mount St. Helens was sending ash and gas miles into the sky. This giant blast didn't come out of nowhere. The warning signs started months before. On March 16, 1980, tiny earthquakes shook the volcano for the first time in years. By March 27, after hundreds of quakes, Mount St. Helens had its first little steam eruption in over a century. It threw ash and rock into the air and blasted a crater in the icy summit. The volcano kept getting angrier. That crater grew fast and cracks spread across the summit. At the same time, eruptions went from one every hour in March to one every day by April. Then things quieted down for a while. Few people realized that the danger was just beneath the surface. By May, over 10,000 earthquakes had rattled the mountain. The north side of the volcano swelled outward, growing about 450 feet. It was a bulge so huge that it looked like the mountain was about to explode. Scientists knew that magma was pushing up inside, creating a hidden cryptodome, a giant underground pocket of molten rock. And then it blew, shattering the mountain and changing the landscape. On May 18, 1980, exactly at 8:32 a.m., a magnitude 5.1 earthquake hit Mount St. Helens. Without any obvious warning signs, the entire north side of the volcano, the part that had been bulging out for weeks, suddenly broke loose and slid away in a massive landslide. This wasn't just any landslide, it was the largest debris avalanche ever recorded on Earth. Imagine a giant mass of rock, dirt, and trees rushing downhill. It was like dumping 1 million Olympic swimming pools full of stuff into the valley. When the cryptodome got ripped away, the pressure inside the volcano dropped incredibly fast, and this sudden pressure release triggered a huge sideways explosion that tore through the landslide debris. This lateral blast was insanely fast, over 300 miles per hour, and it ripped through everything in its path. Trees were uprooted, forests flattened, and a giant cloud of ash and hot rock shot straight up into the sky. In just 15 minutes, that eruption cloud soared more than 80,000 feet high, way higher than an altitude of 35,000 feet at which commercial airplanes fly. The blast destroyed an area nearly 19 miles wide from west to east and stretched over 12 miles to the north. In the zone closest to the volcano, almost no trees were left standing. At the blast's far edge, the remaining trees were scorched and burned. A huge area, about 230 square miles, was covered by a thick blanket of hot debris. That sudden release of pressure also affected the volcano's plumbing system, all the way to the underground magma chamber. With less pressure holding it back, the superhot magma suddenly expanded and rushed upward toward the surface. Starting just after noon, fast-moving pyroclastic flows, superhot clouds of gas, ash, and debris, raced out of the crater at speeds between 50 and 80 miles per hour. Those flows formed what we now know as the pumice plain. Scientists say the eruption hit its most powerful stage between 3 and 5 p.m. When the violent phase finally ended, the summit revealed a brand new giant crater shaped like an amphitheater. All day long, the winds carried over 540 million tons of volcanic ash east across the United States. The ash was so thick, it caused total darkness in Spokane, Washington, about 250 miles away. Ash also fell as far as central Montana and could even be spotted hundreds of miles farther east, all the way to the Great Plains, which is over 900 miles from the volcano. The massive ash cloud spread across the entire US in just 3 days and then circled the entire planet in just 15 days. But there was one more problem. The hot gas and rocks were so wild and fast that they melted and ripped up a lot of the snow and ice sitting on top of Mount St. Helens. That sudden rush of melted ice and water mixed with loose dirt and rock, creating fast-moving, dangerous mud flows called lahars. Those lahars tore down the mountain into the river valleys, and the biggest, nastiest lahar hit the North Fork Toutle River. As this muddy, powerful flood barreled downstream, it picked up more dirt and debris, growing bigger and stronger. It smashed through bridges, crushed homes, and finally slammed into the Cowlitz River, reaching its peak size around midnight, about 50 miles away from the volcano. The whole natural disaster took the lives of more than 50 people. After the eruption, the mountain looked like a wasteland, and scientists wanted to see how life could start fresh in such a harsh place. So, their unusual plan was to release a few gophers to dig around the barren soil. Those busy burrowers churned up ash and volcanic debris, digging deep enough to bring buried bacteria and fungi back to the surface. Tiny microbes, especially mycorrhizal fungi, are crucial because they help plants get water and nutrients. It's like hooking roots up to a nutrient highway. Within 6 years, places where gophers worked got covered with over 40,000 plants. At the same time, nearby untouched areas stayed mostly lifeless. The fungi helped plants grow in the soil that was otherwise nutrient-poor and lifeless. Even old-growth forests buried under ash bounced back quickly, thanks to their own fungal networks. But where forests had been clear-cut before the eruption, no such comeback happened. No trees, no fungi, just burned soil even decades later. Divers have found something incredible in a Florida sinkhole, and it was... Stop, we need to leave a warning here. You're about to hear some pretty unusual scientific information. This knowledge will make you the smarty pants in your friend group. But there's also a risk that they'll look at you as a nerd. So perhaps it would be better for you to keep this knowledge a secret. In any case, it won't be superfluous. So, you know that scientists divide the history of our planet not only by time periods, but also by which animals lived at a certain time. For example, 2,000 years ago, Earth was inhabited by the blobfish, and scientists call this time the blobfish period. It's a joke, there's never been such a period, but you get the gist. The period between about 419.2 million and 358.9 million years ago is called the Devonian period, or the Age of Fish. Do you know why? Because the first fish began to appear on the planet. The Paleogene is the period of large mammals. The famous Jurassic period marks the appearance of giant dinosaurs, which we often see in the movies. Even now, we live in a certain period called the Quaternary period. It began about 2.6 million years ago and continues to this day. This is the time of humans and modern animals. So the next time somebody asks you what time it is, you can just answer, it's the Quaternary period. In short, the names of these periods depend more on what creatures inhabit the planet. The longest period is the Precambrian period, or Age of Early Life, the time when life on the planet started to form. Soft-bodied worms and jellyfish swam in the ocean, while microorganisms lived on land. This period occupies almost 90% of the Earth's total geological time. It started about 4.5 billion years ago and ended 540 million years ago. Oh, It's still a video about divers, don't forget. We'll get back to them soon. Considering all these periods, do you know which one is of the most poorly studied? A period about which scientists know almost nothing, especially about the animals that lived at that time. This is the Irvingtonian North American land mammal age. It lasted from about 1.6 million to 250,000 years ago. Scientists have very few fossils that belong to this time, but recently, everything has changed. In the USA, there's the Steinhatchee River, which stretches for several tens of miles in the area of Big Bend, Florida. And just 500,000 years ago, there was a sinkhole instead of the river. This is a hole in the ground that forms when water dissolves the upper rock. This rock is often limestone. Sinkholes appear in places with a lot of precipitation. Sometimes these pits can be invisible. They look like ordinary ground, but the soil in them is loose and can easily collapse. If you accidentally get into a sinkhole, people will hear your screams and help you. But in the distant past, about 500,000 years ago, when animals got there, they couldn't get out of the pit, so it became their grave. After many, many years, a river appeared here, and then several fossil collectors decided to check out this place and discovered a real paleontological treasure in it. They plunged into the river and reached the bottom. There, in the murky water, they saw horse teeth sticking out of the sediment. It'd be pretty scary to find for many of us, but for these guys, it was the jackpot. After the teeth, they found a hoof shaft and the skull of an unusual animal. At that moment, the collectors realized they had made a major discovery. Over the years, the sinkhole at this place had been filled with sedimentary rocks. Then, the river compacted all this mass, which made it possible to keep everything inside the sinkhole in good condition. Many animals got trapped in this pit 500,000 years ago, and only now have people managed to get them out. More precisely, what's left of them. Divers have found more than 500 fossils belonging to ancient animals, including unknown species. They got well-preserved bones of ancient horses, giant armadillos, sloths, and a new species of tapir. The Florida Museum examined the remains and determined that they belonged to the poorly studied Irvingtonian North American land mammal age. Most of all, scientists were struck by two finds in this collection. The first was the remains of a giant armadillo-like creature, and the second was the skull of an ancient tapir. In case you didn't know, this is a very cute pig-like mammal that has a short trunk like an elephant. Divers in Florida found the remains of a distant ancestor of this animal, which may be a new unknown species. Most of the fossils in this sinkhole belong to early Caballine horses, a subgroup that includes modern domestic horses. The remains of horses are so well preserved that scientists have seen signs of wear on their teeth. This will allow experts to understand the diet of these ancient creatures. We often hear news about people finding the remains of ancient animals or dinosaurs in caves, ravines, or at the bottom of lakes. But imagine if they found such remains in a museum. It all started in the early 2000s, north of the Florida border in southwest Georgia. There was a mine where workers mined clay. One day, they found the remains of some ancient animals and gave them to the Florida Museum of Natural History. There, these remains lay in storage, waiting in the wings. And then one day, some guy started sorting them out and noticed a mysterious vertebra of an unknown animal. This little grab caught the guy's attention, so he returned to it over and over again. He studied it, trying to figure out what species the bone belonged to. One day, he realized the bone belonged to an unknown extinct lizard species that looked like a tegu. You've probably seen these predatory creatures that looked like monitor lizards. So, the age of the bone was about 15 to 17 million years old. Let's wrap up our video with something weird. You see this piece of amber-colored stone with stripes? Or is it not the stone? It looks like an ancient seashell. So right now, you're looking at the oldest fossil in history. It's a stromatolite, and its age is, you won't believe it. Make a guess. 100 million years? 500 million years? 1 billion? No. This fossil is about 3.4 billion years old. It represents one of the earliest forms of life on Earth. No, not the stone itself. Stromatolite is just a playground. The early form of life here is these thin strips. They're called cyanobacteria, tiny single-celled creatures. Okay, what about the remains of something bigger? Some ancient animals, for example? Meet the trilobites. They lived here during the Cambrian period, which began about 500 million years ago. This is the time when many invertebrates and fish began to appear. Their exoskeletons helped the trilobites stay remarkably well preserved, considering their age. They were arthropods that looked like something between a spider, a scorpion, and a mutant from another galaxy. These animals lived for a very long time, and people find their remains almost all over the world. They appeared at the very beginning of the Cambrian period, survived it, and became extinct at the end of the Permian period. During the Permian mass extinction, when about 90% of all living beings were wiped off the face of the Earth. These creatures swam in open water, burrowed into the seafloor, or crawled along it. They lived like predators and scavengers. The front of the animal was protected by a strong head shield. It had crescent-shaped eyes and a calcified plate on its lower body. This plate covered its esophagus and mouth. It had several pairs of legs growing from its body. The trilobite could also curl up into a ball, like a woodlouse.
Do you know what one of the most dangerous and scary lakes in the U.S. looks like? Let's check it out. This large lake is filled with blue water reflecting the sun's rays. Lush thickets of oaks and other trees surround this picturesque place. More than 150 small islands, which are the tops of hills, stick out from under the surface. People come here to swim and play frisbee, go boating, and sit quietly on the sand. Nothing dangerous, right? But if you dive underwater with scuba gear and start exploring the seabed, you'll see that it hides old fishing nets, broken sunken boats, debris of houses, and even graves. If you go to the local library and start researching the history of this place, you'll find out that many people were kicked out of the area against their will. You'll learn that there were terrible conflicts between locals here. You'll understand that the idyllic picture hides a terrible drama and hundreds of tragic fates. This is Lake Sidney Lanier, which is in North Georgia. It was named after writer Sidney Lanier, who created the poem Song of the Chattahoochee, dedicated to the river that feeds the lake. Despite the beautiful view, this isn't a natural body of water. Sidney Lanier is an artificial lake created in 1956 to fight floods caused by the river, to provide people with drinking water and hydroelectric power. The perfect place for creepy stories that often happen in small American towns. Before people created the lake, about 700 families inhabited this place. They made up a classic quiet village with farms, houses, churches, mills, and a cemetery. But when the state decided to create a lake here, the authorities forced people to leave their homes. Locals had lived here with their families for generations, and then they had to go away. Most of the buildings were moved, but the cemetery was left untouched. The graves are still there at the bottom, while people on the surface are swimming and having fun. 200 years before the lake appeared, the Cherokee tribe had lived in this place. In the 1830s, they also got kicked out of their territory. Then, in the first half of the 20th century, there was a very big conflict between locals. The reasons for the conflicts are quite scary, so we won't dwell on them. But it's important to note that more than 1,000 people got hurt by this conflict and were forced to leave their homes. So, we have a place where tragic episodes have happened 3 times, and where a lot of people have been injured throughout history. Of course, there's no scientific evidence that those events had any effect on the lake. But if we talk about spiritual karmic plane, then see for yourself. Lake Lanier is considered one of the most dangerous lakes in history. 500 people have drowned or disappeared here since 1956, and almost 200 since 1994. About 11 million tourists visit the shores of the lake every year. About as many people visit the Louvre Museum in Paris. But don't think that accidents happen here because there are too many people there. A few dozen miles to the west, there's another popular lake, Altoona, and the same number of tourists come there every year. But there are almost 3 times fewer accidents there. For some reason, people drown at Lake Lanier, and motorboats often collide. There are no seasons with more or fewer accidents. So the cause of these tragedies may be hidden underwater. Many sunken boats, fishing nets, flooded villages, and graves lie at the bottom. Perhaps when someone dives here, they get tangled in nets, or stuck among debris or bump into rocks. Motorboats may not notice tourists passing by on air mattresses and crash into them. The water in the lake isn't very transparent, which makes it difficult to search for the missing. And then, there's also the legend that spirits inhabit this lake. Locals talk about phantoms who come out of the graves and try to pull the living under the water. Others tell stories about 27 ghosts of those who drowned in the lake over the years, but whose bodies haven't been found. But the scariest legend is probably the one about the Lady of the Lake. In 1958, 2 friends, Delamay Parker Young and Susie Roberts, got into their car. They drove to the gas station, refueled the car, didn't pay for the gas, and went to the lake. The evening started fun, but it turned into a terrible night. The girls drove off the bridge when they were crossing the lake and disappeared. For an entire year, no one knew what had happened to them, but people thought that the lake had taken them. One day, a local fisherman went to the lake to catch some fish and suddenly noticed a body in a blue dress floating near the bridge. It was poorly preserved, so the examination couldn't determine the identity of the person. But many locals were sure that the body belonged to Parker Young. Some people saw that day that she borrowed this dress from Roberts and put it on. But where was the other girl? And why was there no car? A few decades later, in 1990, authorities discovered an old Ford sedan at the bottom of the lake. They extracted the car and found the body of Susie Roberts inside. After this tragedy, locals started telling scary stories about how a transparent Parker Young in a blue dress grabs passers-by by their clothes and tries to drag them into the water. So, what do we have now? 3 terrible events have occurred at this lake over the last 200 years, affecting thousands of people. There's an old cemetery at the bottom of the lake, which the authorities decided not to move. 2 girls drowned there. At first glance, these events are not related to modern accidents. But honestly, we all feel and understand this connection inside. Places with such heavy energy and such a past may influence the present. Some skeptics will argue with this, but let's be honest, hardly anyone will buy a house when something terrible and tragic has happened. Today, Lake Lanier is more popular than ever. Millions of tourists, beautiful views, and picnics. Nothing suspicious, but you should still be careful. Just open the internet and read about the accidents happening there. Those missing people didn't expect their vacations to turn into a tragedy, so be very vigilant if you decide to come there. Now let's finish our video with something mysterious but more upbeat. How about the Vanishing Lake in Northern Ireland? You come there, swim, take cool pics, and decide to come back for a picnic with your friends. You come the next day with your homies, but hey, there's no lake. It's gone. Your friends are so angry. They come all their way there because of a silly prank. You feel like you're going crazy. Well, calm down. You're fine. There was a lake. In fact, it's still there. It just has a curious geological quirk. 3 streams fill this lake, but none of them can flow out. The lake fills up quickly, and then, when it reaches a certain point, it just flushes away, like the water in a toilet bowl. There are gaps at the bottom of the lake that are clogged with peat and debris. They act like bath plugs. But when there's too much water, these plugs fly out and the lake goes underground. So relax and come here another day when it's filling again. The road that leads to the lake is slightly raised off the ground so that people can walk along it. Previously, this road went underwater and reappeared. And don't be surprised if one night you see an old horse-drawn carriage on this road. It does look scary and creepy. Legend says that more than 100 years ago, a carriage with horses was crossing this lake when the water level was high. The carriage sank, and locals have been telling scary tales about the phantom ever since.
You probably know someone who's been unemployed for a while. Let's call him John. John's been job hunting for months. In the meantime, government benefits help him pay rent, bills, and food. Then he finally gets a job. He's excited, gets his first paycheck, and thinks life is back on track. But here's the problem. That paycheck is just high enough to make him lose his benefits, and still too small to replace what he just lost. Now he also has new costs, like paying for transportation to get to work and childcare while he's at the office. So after all that, he realizes that he actually has less money now than when he was unemployed. That's not just frustrating, it's a real thing, and it even has a name: the welfare trap. This is just one of many poverty traps that affect about 1 billion people around the world. And in the US alone, over 35 million people are living in poverty. So the big question is the American dream a lie? Well, John doesn't see it that way. He truly believes hard work will pull him out of poverty. But right now, his paycheck barely covers rent and bills. So he starts cutting back on basic needs, like food. The problem is, eating badly doesn't just leave us hungry. It also reduces our capacity to work. When you don't eat well, you feel tired all the time, and it's harder to focus or learn new skills. So it drags down your productivity. And when that happens, you don't move up. You stay stuck in the same cycle of low-paying jobs, one after another. And you still can't afford the things that could really help you move forward to a better-paying job. Then there's healthcare. When you're poor, most of your money goes to just getting through the month. So going to the doctor feels like something you can't afford, unless it's an emergency. The thing is, by the time you have to go, a small health problem has often turned into a big one. Something that could have been fixed with a simple, cheap visit becomes expensive and serious. You miss work, you get hit with medical bills, and you fall even deeper into the hole. Now, think about education. A lot of people finish college already drowning in debt, so they take whatever job they can get, even if it doesn't need a degree, just to pay off their student loans. One report found that 1 year after finishing their degree, 52% of graduates were working in jobs below their education level. 10 years later, around 45% of those people were still stuck in the same situation. All these tough repeating cycles are connected to something known as the capacity curve. Basically, if you're already doing financially okay, an extra dollar can really help you move forward. But when you're poor, that same extra dollar mostly goes to survival, rent, food, bills, and debts. So climbing up takes way more effort, even when you're working just as hard. But where does poverty come from? There are two ways to see it. First, the macro view. Some roots go way back. Things like historical injustices that still affect people today. Then, there's the micro level. Right now, 5 things push a lot of people into poverty: long-term unemployment, debts, trouble with education, trauma, and families breaking down. And the hard part is, these things almost never come alone. They usually stack together. One problem makes the next one worse, and pretty soon you're dealing with a whole pile of barriers that are really hard to escape. That's why about 1 out of every 10 people in the US lives in poverty. And by that, I mean families that are making around $38,000 a year or less. So our guy John is stuck right in that group, but he's still hopeful. And honestly, you can see why. Just like a lot of us, he grew up watching his grandpa live the old-school American dream. John's grandpa finished school, got hired young at a steady factory job, and a couple of years later, he was making enough money that one paycheck covered the basics. Back in the mid-60s, he bought a simple 3-bedroom house for about $12,000, paid it off over time, and raised his family there. By the time he hit his late 50s, he had a pension, a house that was fully paid for, and a life where the rules felt pretty clear. Work hard and things get better. John always figured he'd follow that path too, but now that he's getting older, it feels harder and harder to reach that life. Research shows that about half of Americans still think the American dream is possible, but honestly, the numbers tell a different story. These days, improving your financial situation is much harder than it used to be. America's social mobility is now one of the lowest in the country's history. So basically, the poorer someone grows up today, the more likely they are to stay poor as an adult. If nothing changes, some experts believe that the US could stop being a place where you can shape your future with hard work and control your economic destiny. Instead, it starts looking more like a place where your life is decided the day you're born. Rich kids stay rich, poor kids stay poor. Over the last 30 years, the richest Americans have taken a much bigger slice of the country's income. The share going to the top 1% has roughly doubled. Meanwhile, the income of working-age US citizens have barely grown lately. In fact, it's the slowest growth we've seen since the 2010s. And when you look at what people can actually buy with their paychecks, I mean their real purchasing power, it's close to the weakest growth we've seen in the last 10 years. That takes us back to John. Even working extra hours, he still can't afford a house, and every day it feels like groceries just keep getting more expensive. Then he looks at his boss. The guy shows up in fresh designer suits, drives more than one car, and somehow buys a new house every few years. So John wonders, is it just because he has a higher salary? Well, not really. Because here's the thing with the American dream. These days, it starts to look like a lie, but only for poor people. While regular people deal with higher prices and tighter budgets, wealthy people are making money from what they already own. Put it simply, John's paycheck gets eaten up by basics like food, transportation, and rent, and his wages can't keep up because of inflation. But his boss was born with money and owns things like stocks, property, and other investments. When overall prices rise because of inflation, those assets often rise too. So instead of falling behind, he stays protected and keeps getting richer. And just like that, the gap between rich and poor in the US has been growing for decades. And by 2021, the top 1% held about a third of the country's wealth, while the bottom half of Americans only had a tiny slice. Around 2 or 3%. Yeah, I know. That's a lot to take in, but John can't just give up. Getting out of poverty is possible. One thing you can do is to find one specific solid skill that employers around you really need, and then learn it in the cheapest way you can. That could be through community college, a free training program, books from the library, or even tutorials on YouTube. Although that's a good idea, here's the hard part. There is no magic solution, because poverty doesn't look the same for everyone. What helps one person might not help someone else at all. That's why it's almost impossible to find one big plan that works for everybody. But hey, that doesn't mean we stop trying, right? Off the coast of Virginia, the ocean floor was recently rearranged on purpose. Massive ships vacuumed up millions of tons of sand, carved shapes that looked as if a giant ice cream scoop had scraped the seabed. It wasn't a geological disaster. It was the first phase of one of the boldest and largest engineering projects in US history. To understand why engineers are literally reshaping the seafloor, you have to look at the map. This is Hampton Roads, Virginia. This region is shaped by water. Two major cities, Norfolk and Hampton, face each other across a busy harbor. For decades, the main way to travel between them was the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel System, or HRBT, built back in the 1950s. It's basically a bridge that ducks underwater only at the ship channel, so cargo and Navy ships can pass above it. That system is now overwhelmed. At peak demand, close to 100,000 vehicles tried to pass through this single crossing in a day, pushing it far beyond what it was designed to handle. The road was designed for a different era, when cars were bigger but the traffic was lighter. Today, it can regularly turn into a parking lot in the middle of the sea. But this problem goes beyond missed dinners and being late for work. It is also a national security crisis. Norfolk is home to the largest naval base on the planet. This is where the United States parks its expensive aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. The base depends on roads. If a crisis happens, the Navy needs to move fast, and if the road is clogged, they'll get stuck in traffic. That makes the stakes incredibly high. At first, the fix sounds obvious. Too many cars? Build a bigger bridge. But Hampton Roads isn't a quiet river. Those aircraft carriers and cargo ships need a wide, unobstructed path to the ocean. A bridge becomes a low ceiling. You can't raise the bridge without blocking traffic for years, and you can't lower it without trapping the fleet. So, engineers chose the only option left: go underneath and create a unique expansion. The official price tag for this job sits at $3.8 billion. The goal is to create 2 new underwater tubes right next to the old ones, but the logistics here make it difficult. There's not enough land to start digging. The machine needs a dry launch pad to start the dig and a receiving pit to catch it on the other side. That's why the engineers decided to manufacture the land themselves. They brought in dredging ships that operate like floating vacuum cleaners. These vessels lower a suction head to the seafloor to inhale the seabed before pumping that mud water mix through miles of floating pipes. The output is amazing. The pipes shoot the mix up in high arcs that look like a cool, messy rainbow before it builds up on the surface. This process moved enough earth to expand the artificial islands by 15 acres, creating solid ground where there used to be open water. However, this was not just a simple vacuum job. This harbor has been a naval hub for centuries. The seabed is a graveyard of lost history. Dredging crews had to watch out for unexploded stuff hiding in the mud. We're talking about discarded explosives from centuries ago. Sucking something like that into a high-pressure pipe is a quick way to ruin the schedule. Once that new land was solid enough to stand on, the construction team needed a mechanical beast capable of eating through it. That's why they brought in a huge worm-like machine called Mary. Mary is way more than just a supergiant drill. She is a factory on wheels that stretches longer than a football field and weighs over 9 million pounds, roughly the weight of stacking 9 fully loaded jumbo jets on top of each other. At the front of the machine sits a massive cutter head, 46 feet wide, covered in steel teeth that spin to chew through the soil while the rest of the machine builds the tunnel behind it. Building a machine this large costs $70 million, and she had to be shipped from Germany in pieces just to reach the job site. But the coolest part of this machine isn't the steel, it's the human element inside it. Those cutting teeth don't last forever. Grinding through wet sand and silt wears them down, and eventually, someone has to go in and change them. You can't just crack open a hatch down there. You're deep under the harbor with tons of water and mud pressing in from every direction. Instead, crews work inside sealed, pressurized sections of the machine. Many of the tools can be reached from inside the TBM itself, but it's still tight, loud, and unforgiving. Every move has to be planned. Systems have to stay carefully controlled. The work is slow, deliberate, and tightly monitored because mistakes here are expensive and dangerous. Digging with Mary was a dangerous balancing act. The ground under the harbor isn't solid rock. It's soft, wet silt that behaves like toothpaste. This created a constant nightmare for the pilots driving the machine. If Mary pushed forward too fast, she would over-excavate, meaning she would suck in too much dirt. This creates a void underground that travels up to the surface. On land, that makes a pothole. In the ocean, it creates a massive sinkhole that could swallow the water above and flood the tunnel. But if she moved too slowly, the sheer weight of the Atlantic Ocean would crush the tunnel face inward. To stop the ocean from winning, Mary used a pressurized slurry shield to push back against the mud, keeping the tunnel face stable while her cutters chewed forward. As she advanced, robotic arms installed concrete rings behind her, turning a hole in the mud into a rigid, waterproof tube in seconds. Steering her was another headache. Mary had no windshield. The pilots were driving blind through the dark. They had to rely on lasers and computers to navigate a strict curve deep underground. They had to hit a tiny target miles away. If they drifted off course by even a few inches, the tunnel wouldn't connect, and the project would be a failure. Mary launched in 2023, and despite all the challenges, after 29 months, she made her final breakthrough in September 2025. While it feels like the finish line, it's really the end of just one phase. Boring the tunnel creates the hollow space, but crews still have to build the tunnel's nervous system. They are currently installing the roadway, power, and lighting. But the most critical piece of tech is invisible to most drivers. It's the ventilation. The biggest danger in an underwater tunnel isn't a leak, it's fire. If a car catches fire deep underground, the smoke has nowhere to go. To solve this, engineers are installing massive jet fans that look like aircraft engines strapped to the ceiling. In an emergency, these fans spin up to hurricane speeds to suck the smoke out and push fresh air in, keeping the escape routes clear. It takes all this complex tech to make an underwater tube feel like a normal drive rather than a survival mission. But the transformation isn't just happening underwater. Above the surface, crews are rebuilding miles of highway to connect the new tubes to the rest of the world. When the sand settles and the ribbon is finally cut, the landscape of Virginia will look deceptively similar. The water will still be there, the ships will still sail, but underneath the surface, the dynamic of the region will have fundamentally shifted. For the commuter, it means getting out of the traffic jam. For the Pentagon, it means the assurance that the Atlantic Fleet is never boxed in. But for the engineers, this project is a testament to something bigger. It's proof that not only we can build structures over obstacles, but we can also successfully transform the Earth to fit our needs. Engineers moved islands, vacuumed the seafloor, and bored through miles of unstable slime to create a path where nature never intended one to be. It's a fight against geology and a massive investment in national security. But in Hampton Roads, where the ocean meets the asphalt, it proves that the map is only permanent until it's time for another redraw. The country's authorities are hiding something from you. They don't want ordinary people to ever find out the truth. You can see a lot of fake photos and false locations on the internet, but almost none of them are true. So what secret are they keeping? You definitely don't expect to hear this. They're hiding a tree. But it's not just a tree. Money grows on its branches. Can you believe it? Of course not, it's a joke. But the truth is, America does protect the oldest tree in the world, and its name is Methuselah. You can Google it and you will find a lot of fake pictures and some old gnarled aspens. Real photos of Methuselah are quite rare, and its location remains a mystery to this day. It's known to grow somewhere along the Methuselah Trail in the Inyo National Forest in California. It's a bristlecone pine tree, and its age is more than 4,600 years. Imagine how cool it would be to touch the trunk of that tree and feel all those thousands of years of history. Only, it's not cool. This is the reason why the country is hiding its location. If thousands of tourists touched the tree and picked up small pieces of its branches, it wouldn't last even a month. Many trees in this area are pretty weak right now and suffering from drought and all kinds of bad insects. So Methuselah is also in danger. Don't touch or approach it, even if you find out the location. The tree was discovered by dendrochronologist Edmund Shulman. A dendrochronologist is a scientist who studies the rings of ancient trees. But more on that later. So Shulman discovered the tree in the middle of the previous century, and over the past 50 years, it has become shrouded in rumors and legends. But how did Shulman know it was the oldest? In 1957, he took a core sample and studied the tree's annual rings. You see, every year, a layer forms inside a tree, resembling a ring. But scientists don't cut the trunk, don't worry. They extract a piece as thick as a pencil, and that's enough. The more layers, the older the tree is. So Shulman counted Methuselah's rings and found out that it's been growing for more than 4,600 years. This means it's even older than ancient giant redwoods, which were considered the oldest trees on the planet. In 1958, Shulman told the story about the existence of Methuselah and posted its photo in National Geographic. From that moment on, the tree became popular. Many people wanted to pluck a cone or twig from it, so the authorities forbade publishing information about the location of the tree. Later, other scientists examined Methuselah's rings and suggested it could be younger, though some rings were too faint or damaged to count. In any case, it remains the most ancient tree on Earth, officially confirmed that is. But it wasn't always like this. Back in 1964, a geographer, Donald R. Curry, stumbled upon a tree called Prometheus, which was about 5,000 years old. And you know what he did? He just cut it down. There are many theories about why he did it. The tool for getting core samples was broken, or this guy didn't know how to use it, but the result was sad. The tree didn't survive. Hopefully nothing like this will happen to Methuselah and it will live a long life. But why are scientists so worried about it? Yeah, it can tell a lot about the history of our planet. But is there another reason? There's a theory that this tree could live forever if no one cut it down, and droughts or parasites didn't destroy it. So basically, Methuselah's like nature's fountain of youth. Imagine if we could use that trick on people. Okay, now we know what the US hides, but do you know what Australia keeps secret? Not just a tree, but an island. Even if you were allowed to visit the island, it wouldn't be easy for you to get there. The island is located between Australia and Antarctica, somewhere in the middle of the ocean, but it's unlikely that you would get such permission. The fact is that Heard Island is completely untouched by humans, and Australia wants to keep it that way. You'll find little reliable information about this island on the internet. All we know is that the island has 2 active volcanoes, Australia's tallest mountain, and several glaciers. But you know what the coolest thing is? It's home to animals you won't find anywhere else. The island's closed ecosystem preserves creatures that might have never seen people. The next island is quite famous and is located in Brazil. The authorities don't keep it a secret, but they protect it from tourists. Even if you had permission to visit this place, you probably wouldn't want to. This is Snake Island, and its name speaks for itself. This piece of land contains the largest concentration of venomous snakes in the world. Those are golden lancehead pit vipers. One bite of this snake is critically dangerous for a person. The snakes are all over the place there and have almost no competition from other animals. Only specialists capable of handling these reptiles can visit the island. Lots of secret places stay off limits because humans can mess them up without meaning to. It's not that we're bad, it's just that even being there can change tiny invisible parts of nature. And here's a great example of the kind of destruction we can trigger. You've all seen photos of ancient cave paintings with horses and bulls. One of the most famous of such caves is the Lascaux Cave, which is located in France. On the walls inside the cave, people found more than 600 drawings and about 1,500 engravings. The 20,000-year-old drawings depicted different animals. Scientists opened the cave to the public, and this led to a disaster. Too many people came to see the cave, and it messed up the cave's ecosystem. Then a fungus showed up and started spreading over the walls, ruining the old drawings. It was a tragedy for the scientific world. The cave was quickly closed to visitors. Now, only a small group of archaeologists can enter it. No one knows when or if the cave will open again. Those glimpses of human history from the first European settlements might be lost to the public forever. Our next secret location is in Svalbard, Norwegian archipelago. This is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, a massive storage vault that can keep 4.5 million seeds of different types. The authorities say that the seeds are stored there to preserve the population in case of a local disaster. But a lot of people think they're tucked away for the apocalypse, ready to help us replant Earth if everything goes wrong. But why, of all countries, did people decide to store seeds here? Because of Svalbard's cold, dry climate. The weather conditions here are ideal for seed preservation. The vault is well guarded, it's classified, and no one can get inside except for authorized persons. All our secret places are connected with nature. An island, a forest, a cave. But how about finishing the video in the city? It's in plain sight, but it hides a secret room that is impossible to enter. In Atlanta, Georgia, inside a museum with top-notch security, the secret Coca-Cola recipe sits locked away in a massive safe. What? Yes, this is probably one of the most guarded secrets in the world. Money, diamonds, ancient artifacts. None of them get the kind of protection a single sheet of paper with the Coke recipe does. This secret has been kept there for more than 125 years. The unique storage design and security system make burglary almost impossible. You can visit a specialized museum and see the door to the vault, but nothing else. Sure, it sounds a little crazy to guard a single piece of paper, but then again, this drink has made the company billions. Coca-Cola has been one of the world's favorite drinks for over a century, and it's still raking in massive profits, so it's not surprising that its recipe is kept so secret. In Hawaii, the Big Island is quite literally expanding. Every few years, glowing rivers of lava spill from Kilauea or Mauna Loa and pour into the ocean, instantly turning seawater into steam and molten rock into a brand new coastline. Since the 1980s, eruptions have added hundreds of acres of new land. Far to the north, Alaska's capital has a very unique position. Juneau may look like any other city on a map, but there's one catch. You can't drive there. Huge mountains and massive glaciers block every route, leaving the town completely cut off from the rest of the continent. Seriously, the only way in or out is by boat or plane. Up in Alaska's far north, the city of Utqiagvik spends about 66 days in polar night from mid-November to mid-January with no sunrise. Then it flips to weeks of 24/7 daylight in summer. The Outer Banks in North Carolina are known for slowly moving west, getting pushed inland by waves and storms that scoop up sand from the ocean side and drop it on the sound side. It's known as the place where hurricanes can easily create new inlets. In California's Eureka Dunes, sand can sing. When dry sand grains move down a slope, they bump against each other and create a deep humming or booming noise that can last for several seconds. Scientists refer to this phenomenon as booming sand, but early explorers believed the desert was growling. Some places can't sit still, and others refuse to stop growing. The Rocky Mountains, for example, are still growing. Unlike the older Appalachian Range, which stopped millions of years ago, the Rockies are geologically young and active. It's a slow process that can't be properly measured, but we do know that they are rising. Did you know that rivers are not always content with their direction? In the 1800s, the Chicago River flowed straight into Lake Michigan, all the way into the city's drinking supply. After years of sewage and sickness, engineers thought of something original. They made the river run backward. They dug canals, blasted through rock, and rerouted the current toward the Mississippi instead. To this day, the river still flows the wrong way. Kentucky is famous for being split between two time zones. The western half runs on Central Time, while the east keeps Eastern Time, meaning you can gain or lose an hour just by driving through the middle of the state. The Nevada desert is filled with ghost towns. There are over 600 of them. Most were born overnight during the mining booms, only to die just as fast when the gold ran out. Wooden saloons, empty banks, and rusting rail lines still sit under the sun like movie sets left behind. But what about a ghost town that has a fire burning underneath? In Pennsylvania, there's a place called Centralia that's been on fire since 1962. A coal seam beneath the town caught fire and never went out. It forced nearly everyone to move. The ground still smokes even today. Another fact, my favorite one, is about the whole island full of monkeys. Near the coast of South Carolina, Morgan Island is home to around 4,000 rhesus monkeys with no humans in sight. The monkeys were brought there for research decades ago, and the population exploded. Visitors aren't allowed ashore, partly to protect the colony and partly, well, because it belongs to monkeys now. In Montana's Glacier National Park, there's a mountain where one raindrop can choose 3 paths. Fall on one slope and it flows into the Pacific Ocean. Another sends it to the Atlantic. A third sends it north toward the Arctic. The spot is called Triple Divide Peak, and it's one of the few places on Earth where 3 oceans share a single starting line. And if you think 3-way water splits are rare, there's also the Continental Divide that doesn't actually divide anything. In Wyoming's Great Divide Basin, rainwater gets trapped in the middle and has nowhere to go. It doesn't reach the ocean at all, it just evaporates or sinks into the ground. A lonely no-exit zone in the middle of the continent. Mount Washington is famous because it once held the record for the fastest directly measured surface wind at 231 miles per hour in 1934. That's faster than a race car and strong enough to knock you flat in seconds. Have you ever heard about Lake Superior? It's so vast that it holds about 10% of all the world's surface freshwater. The sheer size of it changes the weather. It is creating its own fog and storms. It's so extremely cold that it affects the air above and produces its own snow. What about bioluminescence? In Florida's Indian River Lagoon, microorganisms called bioluminescent plankton light up the water at night, turning it into a soft electric blue when stirred. It's a rare and beautiful sight to behold. In the middle of Utah's Red Desert, there's a natural bridge so large it looks engineered by giants. It's called Landscape Arch, a ribbon of stone stretching nearly 300 feet from end to end. That's almost as long as a football field, yet only a few feet thick at its narrowest point. A section of it collapsed in the 1990s, and today it's so fragile that hikers can only admire it from a distance. However, Utah hides another enigmatic structure called the Upheaval Dome. Scientists aren't sure it's a meteor impact or the result of ancient salt pushing upward from below. Either way, it's a massive circular crater that looks like the desert tried to grow a mountain in the wrong direction. In Arizona, we have the Barringer Crater. It's one of the best preserved meteor craters on Earth, about 3/4 of a mile wide and nearly 600 feet deep. Scientists believe it was carved out 50,000 years ago when a space rock the size of a small building slammed into the desert at around 29,000 miles per hour. In Michigan, between the 2 peninsulas, there's something unexpected: a floating post office. The Westcott Company has delivered mail on the river since the late 1800s. The J.W. Westcott II has done it since 1949. It's even got its own zip code, 48222. The ship sails up to passing freighters and delivers mail by rope and buckets. It's the only floating zip code in the country, and proof that even the Postal Service can be creative and cool. On the East Coast, Maryland happens to be the only U.S. state without natural lakes. The ones you see, like Deep Creek or Lake Habib, are human-made. Even Arizona has a couple of natural lakes. They just dry up during drought years. Southwest of there, Florida likes sinking holes. Below the sunny beaches and retirement communities is a landscape made of limestone, which dissolves in water. This creates thousands of sinkholes ranging from little pits in backyards to huge underwater caves. Central Florida even got the nickname Sinkhole Alley. Off the coast is one of the biggest examples, the Green Banana Hole, which goes 155 feet under the Gulf of Mexico. In Arkansas, there's this cool park that you have to visit. You can actually dig for treasure there. It's called Crater of Diamonds State Park. It's the only spot in the US where anyone can hunt for real diamonds and keep whatever they find. The park is sitting on an old volcanic crater that brought diamonds to the surface millions of years ago. Oklahoma, however, is infamous for its tornadoes. It averages around 50-plus tornadoes a year and ranks among the highest for their strength. Each spring, the sky there turns from calm blue to chaos in minutes. Another quirky place is in Wyoming. It's called Buford. It's known for having a population of just one person. It's right off Interstate 80, and for years, this one resident was also the mayor, store clerk, and postmaster all rolled into one. After about 2 decades, he moved on and the town got auctioned, complete with its gas station and the sign that proudly read, Population 1. Sounds haunted, huh? Well, that's it for today. I gave you 25 US facts to help you shine during your next trivia quiz. And you can hit like. See ya!
Now, this tiny town on a U.S. map used to exist only on paper, literally. Agloe was never built, never had a mayor, and yet, for a short while, it was officially on the map. Back in the 1930s, 2 map makers from American's General Drafting Company were hired to make a map of New York State. But they wanted to protect their work from copycats. So they created a ghost town and named it after themselves, Otto G. Lindbergh and Ernest Alpers. Take their initials, mix them up a bit, and you get Agloe. Or is it Agloe? Well, no one's quite sure, since it never existed anyways. You see, creating fake towns used to be a thing, because copying maps was also a thing. In the past, map making was serious business, and protecting your work wasn't easy. So cartographers got clever. They started adding tiny traps, fake streets, made-up lakes, even whole towns to spot copycats. These sneaky details were called trap streets or paper towns. If someone copied your map, they'd copy your invention too. It was a quiet way of saying, "Busted," and then taking them straight to court. Then the funniest thing happened. A few years later, another company published a map with Agloe on it. When confronted, they said, "It's not fake. There's a general store called the Agloe General Store right there." Turns out, someone had seen the town's name on a map and decided to open a shop under it. Today, the store is gone, and Agloe is back to being just a lonely road intersection in the Catskills. Now, sometimes fake lands appear on USA maps not on purpose, but because of simple cartography mistakes. Take Isle Filippo, for example. This mysterious island with a fancy name was once proudly shown on maps of Lake Superior, even though it never existed. Back in the 18th century, French travelers were busy exploring the Great Lakes when they saw, or thought they saw, 4 islands out there. Let's just say their methods weren't always precise. But a French cartographer named Jacques-Nicolas Belin didn't know that. He trusted their travel notes and drew Isle Philippe on a map he made in 1744. The problem is that other map makers trusted Belin's work and copied the island onto their maps too. Before long, Island Filippo was as real as any place could be, on paper at least. It stayed on official maps, confusing travelers all the way into the 1820s. That's when explorers finally checked and realized, wait, there's nothing here but open water. Today, historians think the whole thing was a mix-up. The explorers probably confused it with Isle Royale, a real island that's part of Michigan. They were described as 2 islands about the same size, but there was only one all along. Next stop, Nothing. You heard that right, Nothing is the real name of a tiny ghost town in Arizona. If you ever drive down Route 93 between Wickiup and Wickenburg, keep an eye on the towers along the way. On one of them, there used to be a wooden sign painted in red letters that simply said nothing. Hopefully it's still there. This spot marks what's left of a once hopeful settlement in the middle of the blazing desert. Back in 1977, a man named Richard Buddy Kenworthy decided to found his own town. He built nothing out of almost nothing. The place had a gas station and a tiny convenience store, but that was it. Then he added a big yellow sign that proudly declared the town of Nothing, Arizona, population 4. And yep, that was its peak, only 4 inhabitants. I know your family dinner table might have seen bigger crowds. But anyway, in May of 2005, Kenworthy packed up and left, and Nothing was officially abandoned. 3 years later, its famous gas station began to crumble. But some fans, I guess we can call them that, decided to bring Nothing back to life. There was even a small pizza place running there for a while, But it didn't last long. By 2011, nothing was, well, nothing again. And today, it's one of the most famous abandoned towns in the USA. Now, speaking of abandoned towns, some were lost to time, others to something far more dangerous, like Centralia, Pennsylvania. From a distance, everything looks fine, but take a closer look, and you'll notice something strange. Roads cracked open, smoke rising from the ground, and no people in sight. That's because Centralia isn't just abandoned. It's been on fire for more than 60 years. It all started back in 1962. Although there were many theories about how the fire began, the results are well known. The flames spread into the labyrinth of coal mining tunnels running beneath the town, causing devastation as they went. Fissures opened in the ground, sending plumes of smoke and toxic gases into the air, and the fire never stopped. That's right. At first, no one thought much of it, especially because everything was happening underground, out of sight. But soon, smoke began seeping up through the soil. Then, in 1981, a huge sinkhole suddenly opened under the feet of a 12-year-old boy. Thankfully, he grabbed onto a tree root and survived. But that was all the proof locals needed that the fire wasn't going away. Experts warned that the underground blaze could keep burning for more than 250 years. And that's why most of Centralia's 1,000 residents decided it was time to pack up and leave. Today, fewer than 10 people still live there, refusing to move. The rest is nearly a ghost town, with empty streets and crumbling foundations. They don't even have a zip code anymore. Beneath it all, the coal is still burning quietly, making Centralia one of the eeriest forgotten towns in America. And now you might be wondering, how many more of these towns are out there in the U.S.? Well, a lot. Just in Texas alone, there are an estimated 511 ghost towns that are now completely deserted. Then there's Nevada, believed to be home to over 600 phantom towns, many of them left behind after the gold and silver rushes of the 18 and 1900s. People moved there to work in the mines, and when the mine shut down, they left. But abandoned towns and mapping errors aren't just a U.S. thing. Even in the age of satellites and Google Earth, fake cities still manage to sneak onto maps all over the world. One of the most famous modern examples is a place called Argleton. Back in 2008, a guy named Mike Nolan was checking out Google Maps, looking around the area where he grew up, in West Lancashire, England. Then he spotted a city called Argleton, but something felt off. He remembered that spot being just a farmer's field near the village hall. Maybe a footpath crossed it, but that was about it. There was definitely no real city out there. And he was right. It was a total mistake. Nobody knows exactly how it got there, but it did. Don't bother looking for it, though. Argleton was officially removed from Google Maps by May 2010. And even if you look for its old coordinates today, you'd only see an empty, muddy field. Alright, so Argleton might have been fake, but it sure had a lot of fans. When people first discovered it online, they went a little wild. And then came all the jokes. People were actually selling souvenirs that said, "I visited Argleton and all I got was this t-shirt." Some local restaurants even offered Argleton pie, and the ingredients were, well, nothing. Believe it or not, even today you can still find merch online celebrating the world's most famous Google Phantom Town. Well, that's the end of our tour of the strangest ghost towns on the maps of the USA, and even beyond. So, tell me, have you ever been to an abandoned city before? Have you ever discovered hidden places on the map that shouldn't even exist? Well, share your story in the comments below.
You think you'll just dig a hole or two in your backyard. No big deal, everyone does it. What you do not know is that there's something hiding beneath your backyard. Quiet, invisible, waiting. And one small dig can set it all off. Power outage, gas leak, flood, worse. People think it won't happen to them, but it only takes one mistake. Before you grab that shovel, you need to hear this. My neighbor, let's call him Dave, decided to build a fence last spring. A couple of holes in the yard, some wood, maybe a weekend of work. The problem? Dave is just a wing-it kind of guy. So he didn't call 811 before digging. That free number you call to find out if there are any utility lines underground. Yeah, he skipped that part. So he grabs his post hole digger, starts digging, and boom! He hits a gas line. The whole street had to evacuate. Fire trucks, sirens, the works. Luckily, no one got hurt, but he was very close to blowing up his backyard and his wallet. Between the repair costs, the fine, and redoing his project, it cost him thousands. All because he didn't make a 2-minute call. The thing is, even if you're doing something small, you never know what's under there. Power lines, water pipes, internet cables. You hit the wrong thing and boom. No Netflix for the whole block. Guess what? People will hunt you down. Another story for you, this time about James. He started digging in his backyard, not thinking twice, and hit some underground cable. The internet and half the power went out on his street. The neighbors were not amused. The worst thing though? As an independent contractor, because yeah, James did handyman work on the side, he was the one on the hook. And because he didn't do the one thing everyone tells you to do, and I mean calling 811 before digging, he got stuck paying for the damage. Thousands of dollars. And it wasn't even a big project, just a few holes in the ground. Liam thought he was just cutting a harmless little 2-inch dead gas pipe. Nope, it was a 6-inch live, high-pressure gas main, the kind that could blow the whole block sky high. When the gas company showed up to check the house, they came running out yelling the whole place was filled with gas. Liam was gonna get slapped with a big fine and pay for the repairs, the hours the gas company and firefighters spent fixing the mess, and all the emergency gear used. That could run close to $100,000. So, here's the smart move. Always call 811 before you dig. It's a free service that sends people out to mark where the utility lines like gas, water, electricity are under your property. It's super useful and it can save you a ton of trouble. On the other hand, 811 only marks the public lines that can be on your property. As for your private lines, to detect them, you need to hire a private utility locator. Now, if you're the curious type, pros have some tricks. You can look for letters or symbols near the curb or sidewalk, like W for water, G for gas, E for electric, or check plastic or concrete boxes for labels. That shows where the utilities enter. But just because you know where they start, doesn't mean you know where they go. Pipes and wires don't always run in straight lines. They twist and turn based on all kinds of things, like old landscaping or how someone installed them 40 years ago. Some lines have special tracer wires buried with them, and pros can attach a locator to those and track them underground. They might also use metal detectors or ground-penetrating radar. Or if they're really old school, something called a water witch, which sounds made up, but it's real. And yes, you can try some of this on your own. You can even buy some tools on Amazon. But they're pricey, kind of confusing to use, easy to mess up, and scientists do not recommend using them, saying they don't really work. So the fastest and safest move is just calling 811. But how deep are those underground water and gas lines really? Spoiler, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Water lines, for example, can be buried anywhere from 12 to 36 inches deep, depending on where you live. If you're in a cold area, they're usually deeper, so they don't freeze and burst in winter. It usually depends on your climate and soil. Want to make a guess where yours might be? Look up your local frost line depth. That's the level in the ground where the soil freezes in winter. According to the building code, water lines should be buried at least 6 inches below that frost line, unless the person who installed them didn't follow the rules. And yeah, that happens. Gas lines work the same way. Most are buried 18 to 24 inches deep, though in some places it can be up to 36 inches. They usually run from the street to your gas meter. Local codes and conditions decide how deep they go, and they're found using the same tools as water lines, detectors, tracers, and sometimes even radar. Now, sewer lines. They're tricky because they don't just sit in one place. They're built on a slope, so the waste can flow downhill. In colder places like upstate New York or anywhere that freezes, these pipes have to be buried pretty deep, like 3 feet or more, so they don't freeze and burst in winter. But in warmer spots, they might be much closer to the surface. So one wrong dig and boom, you've got a smelly mess. You can sometimes spot them if you look around your yard for a little pipe sticking out. That's a sewer cleanout or vent, kind of like the pipe's breathing hole. Electrical lines are a whole other adventure. The rule is, the more dangerous the wire, the deeper it's buried. So your TV cable might just be barely under the ground, about a foot down, which is kind of scary if you ask me. Regular electric wires usually hang out around 2 feet deep, but the really heavy-duty stuff like high voltage lines, those go at least 3 feet under because, well, you definitely don't want to mess with those. If you want a clue where your electric lines start, check out your electric meter on the side of your house. That's usually where the main line comes in. And then there's this whole thing with colored spray paint and flags you'll see once you call 811. It's like their secret code. Red means electrical, yellow is gas or oil, blue is water, green is sewer, orange is your phone or internet cables, purple is for reclaimed water or irrigation, and white shows where you want to dig. It sounds like a rainbow exploded in your yard, but it's there to save you from disaster. Okay, so you've called 811, and those nice folks have come out to spray paint your yard with all the colors telling you where the underground lines are hiding. Great! Now you think, sweet, I'm ready to dig. But hold up, there's a golden rule you really need to follow. Don't even think about digging closer than 2 feet from any of those marked lines. The thing is, those paint marks from 811 aren't perfect. They're more like a rough idea where the pipes and wires run. So you want to leave about 2 feet on each side. That's basically a 4-foot no-dig zone. Digging inside that space? You better be extra careful or risk hitting something important. Builders and installers don't always follow the rules. Sometimes they bury pipes shallower than they should to save time or money. So when the time comes to get your hands dirty, don't go wild with the power tools near those lines. Dig parallel to the lines if you know their direction. That way, if you accidentally bump into something, you'll hopefully just nick the side instead of cutting it clean through. And never ever use heavy equipment or a big pick when you're not 100% sure what's under the dirt. Hand tools only.
Do you know that our planet has scars? One of them is located in North America. This scar can tell us many cool things about the history of Earth, but the most interesting thing is that it could change the appearance of our continents and break our world. But for some reason, this scar hasn't done it yet. And that's not even the most interesting part. The coolest thing about this scar is that it might hold a giant source of clean, cheap energy. So let's go to Kansas to find out what it is. So, 1.1 billion years ago, a giant rift formed in the crust of our planet on the territory of the modern U.S. Midwest. It's called Broken Heart. This giant crevice is filled with solidified magma, and from afar, it looks like a real scar. But how did it show up? Broken Heart was an ancient rift valley, a huge geological fault forming elongated hollows in the Earth's crust. It occurred because tectonic plates had moved apart. It's like the details of a jigsaw puzzle that suddenly started to separate. At that moment, thousands and even millions of tons of magma spilled out from the depths of our planet. That event looked like a real apocalypse, lasting about 100,000 years. But then it stopped, and scientists don't know why. If the rifting process had lasted longer, then most likely, the continent of North America would look different today, or it wouldn't even exist at all. Right now, this fault looks like a giant horseshoe that stretches from Kansas north to Lake Superior and south to Michigan. But some studies indicate that the fault may be larger and extend even further south, and the width of the fault might equal the width of the Red Sea. After the rifting stopped, the entire valley got covered with hills and trees. The fault itself is covered with a thick layer of sedimentary rocks, so it's quite difficult to track. The most noticeable parts of the rift are in the Lake Superior area. Now everything looks calm and beautiful, but in the past, there were fountains and rivers of lava, earthquakes, a boiling pot on a planetary scale. All that remains of it are deposits of basalt, a dark, dense rock that forms from cooled lava. There was so much basalt that its weight pushed the valley deeper and deeper into the Earth's crust. Even when the eruptions and rifting stopped, the valley continued to sink because of the huge mass of this sediment. Then, massive sections of the Earth's crust on both sides of the valley began to contract, and the pieces of the puzzle slowly started to come together. This led to a large-scale ejection of volcanic material upward, and along with basalt, deposits of copper rock appeared in the valley. People mined this copper for about 8,000 years until the end of the 20th century. The copper mines were eventually shut down, but now it seems the industry is making a comeback. However, Broken Heart is not interesting to people just because of its copper reserves. It holds something more valuable and useful for our civilization. Scientists believe that this valley hides massive reserves of hydrogen, and this substance can help us switch to a cleaner, cheaper, and more efficient energy source. If hydrogen fuel becomes widely available, everyone will switch to it, leaving behind the costly, noisy, and polluting process of oil production. Now, I'll bet hydrogen is a remarkably familiar word to you. It doesn't sound like the discovery of the century, and people have been using it for a long time. On one hand, you're right, but not quite. 90% of the hydrogen produced by humans is used as a raw material for the chemical industry. Hydrogen is used to produce ammonia for fertilizers, methanol for fuel and solvents, and to purify crude oil. Manufacturers of glass, cement, steel, and other metals are considering using hydrogen at their factories for more efficient production. Hydrogen can become an alternative to fossil fuels, that is, oil and gasoline produced from them. Cars, ships, trains, airplanes, and power plants, all of these may switch to hydrogen soon. In this case, production can become cheaper and better for nature, but this will work only if we find open sources of hydrogen. You see, about 95% of the hydrogen we use is produced from fossil fuels. We gasify coal, oxidize hydrocarbons, and extract hydrogen from methane. All of these production methods require energy. But the worst part is that they lead to large emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But what if we find sources of pure hydrogen that don't require processing? Then we'll save energy for its production and make the planet cleaner. But where can we find such sources? Scientists say that there are many of them all over the planet, and one of the largest is located in the Rift Valley in the U.S. Midwest. But what's the problem with going and mining it? Well, it's not that simple. To extract pure hydrogen, you need 3 conditions. The first is the source of hydrogen itself, which is quite logical. The second is reservoir rocks, that is, natural containers where this hydrogen is stored. And the third is natural seals, which prevent the gas from escaping. In other words, these seals work like a cap on a bottle. They don't allow the substance to escape. So in general, it's necessary to find where hydrogen is released, where it accumulates, and where it's stored. When these conditions are met, natural resource extraction companies can start working. But how does hydrogen appear altogether? Well, let's go over the basics of chemistry. Hydrogen and oxygen compounds form water. This means you need to split the water into hydrogen and oxygen. This process often occurs in nature. There are many places all over the planet where this happens. Scientists are confident that at least 30 U.S. states have hydrogen reservoirs, and if people detect them, we will accelerate the energy transition to safer and more efficient fuels. Thousands of cars drive around using gasoline. Many of you know the smell of exhaust fumes, that thick polluted air that's hard to breathe. What about electric cars? They must be improving the situation, right? Well, here's another problem. Producing batteries for these vehicles harms nature. The materials used to make batteries are lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Their extraction involves a large release of toxic materials, not only into the air but also into the water. Transporting these batteries also creates a large carbon footprint. Producing a single electric car emits about 4 tons of carbon dioxide. To make up for that, the owner needs to drive it for at least 8 years. That's how long it takes to offset the emissions a regular car would produce. What about reliability and convenience? What will you do if the battery runs out during the trip and there are no charging stations nearby? This problem will be solved in the future with the growing popularity of electric cars. Now, scientists believe that over the past billion years, the Earth's crust has split enough water into hydrogen and oxygen. Our planet keeps this gas in the ground, waiting for us to start using it. According to calculations, even considering all the technologies and production capacities of our civilization, the reserves of hydrogen in the bowels of the planet are enough to supply us with energy for 170,000 years. That's why the giant rift in Kansas attracts scientists from all over the world. Huge quantities of basalt and other rocks can react with water to release hydrogen. And now scientists are looking for places where this material accumulates and is stored.
The American dream used to sound simple. Work hard, buy a house, build a life. But today, that dream can just as easily sink you. A home isn't a guaranteed asset anymore. It's a long-term, high-risk expense. And the belief that owning one will automatically make you happier? That's nostalgia more than reality. Yet millions of us still chase it. New data shows the average American family could afford only about 15% of homes on the market in 2023, the lowest level ever recorded. And here's the twist. Most Americans still dream of owning a home, yet more than 60% don't think they'll ever get one. A growing number say that no matter how hard they work, a home they actually want is drifting out of reach. Here's the part nobody likes to say out loud. Boomers bought homes when prices were just 2 or 3 times their annual income. And even then, it felt like a big milestone. For Gen Z, that same milestone looks like a locked door. What used to be a symbol of success has quietly turned into a financial trap. Take Jordan. He spent years renting the same cramped apartment, telling himself he just needed a little more time to save. But every time he managed to tuck away a few $100s, life demanded it back. Rent went up, groceries went up, gas went up. Everything crept higher, except Jordan's paycheck. Meanwhile, home prices were sprinting ahead and mortgage rates were climbing right behind them. Every listing Jordan clicked on felt like a reminder. The dream was moving faster than he could chase it. And after a while, it didn't just feel discouraging, it felt impossible. That's when the frustration sets in. The burnout, the quiet realization that the American dream you were promised might not be meant for you at all. Mortgages were designed for a world that barely exists anymore. A 20th century economy where people stayed in the same job for decades, interest rates were gentle, and the population kept expanding. Back then, buying a home felt like a stable, predictable life step. But after the 2008 crash, and especially after 2020, the ground shifted. Wages stopped keeping up, interest rates spiked, housing supply collapsed. And yet the mortgage system, it stayed frozen in time, like it didn't get the memo. What used to be a safe bet slowly morphed into one of the riskiest financial contracts most people will ever sign. People still feel pressured to do it, even if they can barely make the math work. And here's the wild part. Even with record high prices, millions of Americans are still hanging on to that dream. But for the people who did manage to buy, the dream doesn't always look dreamy up close. A new survey shows nearly 7 out of 10 homeowners actually regret buying their home because the financial stress is so much heavier than they expected. All the surprise costs, repairs, taxes, insurance stack up fast, almost aggressively. A study from Clever Real Estate breaks it down. In 2025, owning a home isn't just expensive, it's shockingly expensive. Beyond the mortgage, the average homeowner is shelling out about $24,500 a year. That's more than $2,000 every single month just for utilities, maintenance, repairs, property taxes, insurance. The part nobody puts on the real estate brochure. And utilities alone are the biggest hit right after the mortgage itself. And if you live in a homeowners association, the complications don't stop there. It gets even worse. HOA owners pay roughly $3,000 more every year, pushing their total annual costs to nearly $28,000. $28,000 just to keep a roof over their head. The most unsettling part? Almost nobody saw it coming. More than 8 out of 10 homeowners say the real costs blindsided them. Like they signed up for one life and woke up in another. And nearly half now admit something they never thought they'd say out loud. Renting might actually be the easier path. A real investment pays you back. Your house doesn't do that. In the end, owning a home ends up costing way more than just the price you bought it for. When you look at how much you really spend over the years, any profit you could potentially make from selling it can disappear fast. Let's figure out why. The first years of a mortgage are brutal. Most of your payment disappears into interest, not the home itself. And that money? Gone forever. Add in closing costs, agent fees, and other charges, and you can lose almost 10% of a home's value just buying or selling it. Then come the repairs, the maintenance, the surprise breakdowns. Homeowners often spend 1 to 4% of their home's value every year just keeping it livable. And property taxes and insurance never stop climbing. Take Jess. She thought buying a home in 2019 was the smart move. A cozy 3-bedroom in the suburbs, a manageable mortgage, a sense of pride. But reality hit fast. Taxes went up, insurance went up, the roof leaked, the HVAC got broken. Even routine maintenance cost more than she ever budgeted for. Utilities and HOA fees piled on top. Before long, Jess felt her house draining her bank account faster than she could refill it. Some days, she wishes she'd rented a little longer or saved a lot more. Because when the costs rise faster than your income, owning a home stops being a dream and starts feeling like a trap. This hits millennials the hardest. Some of them only recently bought their first home, just in time for the costs to spiral. Nearly 1 in 4 millennial homeowners say the financial strain is so intense they actually wish they could go back to renting. That's more than double the share of boomers who feel the same. And Gen X? They're struggling too. About 25% say they'd undo their purchase if they could. Now, how about we move on to a different financial matter familiar to literally everyone? Yep, I'm talking about credit cards. In the United States, a single number, your credit score, can define a person's financial life. It affects the ability to rent an apartment, buy a house, take out a car loan, or even qualify for basic services. Many Americans can be approved for huge loans, like $1 million mortgage, while still struggling to pay for daily expenses. The thing is, credit cards are introduced to young Americans very early, often in college. Banks encourage students to get cards with small limits to start building a credit history. But most schools don't teach students how to manage credit, interest rates, or debt responsibly. That's why many Americans view credit as extra money, not borrowed money. This leads to overspending and long-term debt. The idea is buy now, pay later. Student loans and high housing costs normalize debt from an early age, and it becomes common for people to borrow money not only for necessities, but also for luxury items. Curiously, the whole situation is very different for Europe. Credit is generally used only for planned expenses. For everyday spending, people mostly use cash or debit cards. College is free or way cheaper than in the US in most countries, so young adults usually start out without big student loans. Banks don't push credit cards on students, and the culture encourages saving, planning ahead, and avoiding risky money habits. Credit is just a tool, not a must. People can live comfortably without taking on high-interest loans or always borrowing money. Now, another curious thing we rarely think about is how the financial situation impacts young adults' love lives. People have always seen marriage as a big milestone, a sign of stability and commitment. But Gen Z, born around 1997 to 2012, has it tough when it comes to marriage. They're trapped. Student loans, sky-high rent, and the cost of living make tying the knot feel more like a burden than a celebration. Buying a house, raising a family, and keeping up a lifestyle all feel scary when money isn't steady. So unlike older generations who often married young and built wealth together, Gen Z sees marriage as a big financial risk. 1,497. That's the number of valid credit cards that belong to one person. He holds the record for the most active credit cards in the United States. All of them are real and usable. He got into this wild journey in the 1960s because of a bet with a friend, and eventually became Mr. Plastic Fantastic. His record is a good warning sign for holders of over 631 million active credit cards floating around the US as of 2025. That's 2.4 cards per adult. The average card balance is $6,523, and the national credit card debt, get ready for it, is $1.23 trillion. Millions of Americans walking around with 3, 4, even 5 credit cards isn't some quirky habit. It's standard. It's even expected. And that's not because people love plastic, but because the financial system basically trained everyone to think that living on credit equals playing smart. You get better mortgage rates if your credit score is high. You get cash back on groceries. You get travel upgrades. You get 0% intro offers, sign-up bonuses, reward multipliers, points on points on points. And that story starts much earlier than you might think. Back in the 18th century, even before the country became a country, there was barely any actual cash lying around. People bought things on account, borrowing until the next harvest or the next shipment. Then, the 19th century showed up and America moved from farms to factories. Now, people suddenly had something brand new, predictable paychecks. And businesses jumped on that immediately. Installment credit was born. A tiny down payment up front, then weekly or monthly payments after that. For the first time, expensive stuff became accessible to ordinary people. Not because they had money now, but because they'd have money later. Big city department stores were busy reinventing another kind of borrowing, the charge account. If you were well off enough, the store gave you a personal line of credit, and you just paid the balance every month with 0 interest. Stores didn't just let you borrow, they turned it into a status symbol. They introduced charge tokens and later these metal charge plates, basically old school credit cards. They had your account info stamped right into them. In the 20th century, after the Great Depression flattened the economy, the authorities realized that without easy access to credit, the American machine would stall again. That's when buy now, pay later became a national philosophy. In the 1950s, Diners Club launched the first universal card. Then came Bank AmeriCard, which eventually turned into Visa. And these things spread fast. They weren't just convenient, they felt cool, modern, and sophisticated. Suddenly, you could walk into a restaurant, pay with a little rectangle, and walk out looking like you owned half the city. You know that feeling, right? Anyway, banks mailed out millions of credit cards with barely any idea who was receiving them. Imagine you open your mailbox and find a card just sitting there. I have to admit, I wouldn't turn down that free credit. By the 1970s, Visa and MasterCard built nationwide networks. By the 1980s, and this part still blows my mind, banks moved operations to states with no interest rate caps. Rewards programs came next. Points, miles, cashback, like the chocolate sprinkles on the financial sundae. And after decades of this, credit cards didn't just become a tool, they became a lifestyle strategy. Today, most of us don't even view credit cards as debt. It's more of a leverage, a way to live smoothly. On average, a boomer has 4 to 5 credit cards today. Millennials, around 3.5. Gen Z is already at 2.2 and climbing, even though half of them still look like they're 15 years old. Let's get personal. I remember opening my first card because of the sign-up bonus, the free airfare. I didn't think about APR or utilization or minimum payments. I thought about seeing the ocean for the first time. But the moment that first interest charge showed up, something clicked. This isn't free money. This is a system. And I just stepped into it. Just like millions do every year. It made me think. Just because everyone else treats 3 or 4 cards as normal doesn't mean you're safe without rules. Culture normalized it, but that doesn't wipe out the risk. I know people who have one card for everyday essentials, another for emergency or travels, and another one for the big purchases. And then there's a fourth one, which just sits in a drawer but stays open because closing it lowers your credit score. Different cards are basically like different superpowers. One turns every purchase into frequent flyer miles. Another throws cash back at you like it's confetti. And a third hands out gift cards or free gas like some weird financial carnival prize. A lot of these programs quietly cap how many rewards you can earn. So if you want to squeeze every last drop out of your spending, having a few different rewards cards means you never leave points on the table. Banks are just happy about all of this as they make money from interest, fees, and card usage. Their marketing convinces you that rewards equal freedom. You know, that feel-good moment like, look at my platinum card, travel perks. But the math behind that perk comes from others who didn't pay off balances. It's all connected. The system created for convenience became a growth business. And you and I and millions of others are part of the engine. There's this guy who earns around 60 grand a year who ended up carrying about $45,000 in card debt, with almost half of it already tossed into collections. Every single card he has is maxed out. It's the kind of situation where you can practically feel the walls closing in, even though on paper he should be doing fine. It feels like watching someone run on a treadmill that keeps speeding up while everyone yells, "Just keep your balance," from the sidelines. And using credit cards doesn't have to do with lower income. Actually, higher income households earning over $100,000 use cards at a 95% rate. It's even kind of logical. More income means more access, which leads to more cards. But more access also means more temptation. I'm not saying credit cards are all evil. They are powerful. When you use them responsibly, I mean. Pay off balances, keep utilization low, diversify cards for real benefits. They can serve you. But letting them control you? That's where things go sideways. Because the same tools that build credit can also bury it. When I missed a payment due to something else, because yeah, life happens, I realized I had fewer cushions than I thought. Credit isn't a guarantee. It's a responsibility. If you woke up tomorrow without your cards, no rewards, no bonuses, no backup lines, would you still be fine? Would you pay off what you owe? Would you handle emergencies without borrowing more? That's not the questions banks want you to ask. They want you to open and borrow more and more. America isn't a place where people accidentally fall into credit culture. It's a place where the system teaches you how to use it. Like it or not, this is the financial environment almost everyone grows up in. And when I look at all of this, the history, the psychology, the marketing, the incentives, I feel like the entire story of credit cards in America isn't really about money at all. It's about identity, status, trust, and the dream of getting ahead. Credit cards let people buy present comfort with future earnings. They make every dream, new furniture, a 5-star vacation, a fancy laptop, a luxurious car, just one swipe closer. Whether that's empowering or dangerous depends on who you ask. But one thing is certain, the US isn't just the land of opportunity. It's the land of credit, where having 3 credit cards isn't a sign of debt. It's a sign of financial literacy.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.